Perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Torelli. I'm the chairman of the Orange County Funding Corporation and the Orange County Industrial Development Agency. Today is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023, approximately 5:31 p.m. I'd like to get started with the Orange County Funding Corporation portion of our meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a pretty packed agenda for both meetings, so we'll jump right into it. Bill, everything good on the audio-visual side? Good? Okay.
Perfect. I'm going to go right into roll call.
Yes.
Michael Torelli.
Present.
Dean Gamburri.
Present.
Susan Walski.
Present.
Mark Green. James Rinaldi.
Present.
Vincent Oda.
Present.
Giovanni Palladino.
Present.
All 7 board members are present. Staff are here. Myself, Bill Fioravanti, CEO. Marty Borak, our administrative assistant. Of course, we have our general counsel, Susan Katzoff, via Zoom. Busquet Holstein. We also have Dennis Brady from 88 Studios, our AV coordinator. And we have one guest today, Mr. Adam Bosch from Pattern for Progress, the president and CEO, and you'll hear from him in just a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Minutes. We have the, in our board packet, we have the minutes from December 21st, 2022. Any changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Sue. Good a second. Thank you, Dr. Oda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Reports. So committee reports. I'll give a quick update on the Finance Committee. We, like we always do, we try to do at least have a Finance Committee before every board meeting. In the last Finance Committee, we did our regular business, which we'll get into under new business after we get our presentation. So we went over all the different monthly financials, payables, and the fund update, the loan fund update. We also talked briefly about some of the analyses on our investments that we've already made or that are in the process of being made, and some that we may need to change. So those are all things that we'll discuss in greater detail during this meeting and potentially the next meeting. We also, in Finance Committee meeting, spoke about staff reviews, and we went into executive session to speak a little bit about some of that, and we'll be doing that in our second meeting, so we'll do it all at once. Anything else, Bill, that we had to cover under finance?
No, I think, no, not under finance.
Yep.
More under governance.
More under governance for the next one. Yeah. Cool. So, any questions on the committee meeting report for finance? All right, we'll get into some of the specifics momentarily. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Bill for new business and a presentation.
Yes, I've been alluding to this for a while with this board that I wanted to get to the point where you can seriously consider the IDA Act, the Orange County IDA acting on housing projects of what kind is for us to determine. I think we all know that there's a housing crisis out there. It's not just a crisis on its own, it's also impacting economic development. Workers that we need for various projects around here can't afford to live in Orange County. There's not adequate housing. It's something I would like many IDAs around the state are active in and incentivizing or playing a role in one way or another as a bit of a primer. And I do think we have one such project in the pipeline. I'll tell you that. It would be a bond deal, so would be pilot related. It would be kind of an easier transition into a project like that. But as a primer, I wanted to have someone speak intelligently about the housing crisis and the potential impacts on economic development. And there's none better than Adam Bosch here from Pattern for Progress. He's a relatively new president and CEO. How long now, Adam?
It'll be a year next week.
Ah, congrats.
So Adam, you have this. Don't mind the bar at the top. I'm trying to bother me. Sure.
So since I was coming here to Orange County, I like to start with this map. This is one of my favorite Orange County maps of history. A lot of people not recognize this map. This is a map from something called INCODEL, the Interstate Commission on the Delaware, which was a commission among the states of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York in the 50s. In the 1950s, we were facing two different problems related to the Delaware River. One was that the Delaware River was a floating cesspool because so many people were dumping untreated waste into it, but also millions of tons of coal ash from Pennsylvania was being dumped right into the Delaware River. And they were also trying to find new sources of water supply, specifically for New Jersey and for New York City. So this was actually a program that was put together to build new reservoirs along the Delaware, the largest of which would have been the Godefroy Reservoir, which would have been built with a large dam on the Never Sink Reservoir, would have flooded the Bashkill, would have flooded up that whole area in Orange County. A lot of people don't remember this, but it did come within one vote in Pennsylvania of the treaty being ratified and all these things being built. I think it's a lost piece of Orange County history. It's one of my favorite maps because of these things that are on this map, only one of them was ever built, and that was Kansville Reservoir, put into service 1967 as the last of the New York City reservoirs in that system. So anyway, figured I'd start with a little piece of Orange County history and a map. That's one of my favorite what-ifs.
I may not have it on your own second. Here we go.
There still is a Delaware committee, but I think
Yeah, but it's
New Jersey.
Yeah, that's the oh my God, it's yeah, that's not this. This is
Okay.
this was disbanded after the vote failed in Pennsylvania. It's a really interesting little bit of history. I mean, we were successful in cleaning up the Delaware River. So, full agenda, going to give a little housing outlook in the Hudson Valley, talk about some of the demographic ramifications of the housing shortage and some of the other sort of connected stressors, and talk about effects on workforce. And then I did a little research over the past 2 days on some things that other IDAs are doing to be supportive of housing. I'll share that with you. So on the homeownership side, some of this is cut off. That's okay. On the homeownership side, you know, we're underbuilding. If you will compare us to similar metros across the United States, you know, we're pretty close toward the bottom in terms of the amount of housing we've built compared to the number of jobs that have been created in those metro suburbs over time. And for 2 decades, as I mentioned, we've really built not enough housing compared to those other metros. And housing is important because if you talk to real estate people, you talk to economic development people, a lot of them will use the phrase that housing leads commercial. In other words, if you build the housing, you have the workforce, businesses often want to come to where the housing is, where the workforce exists. And so we're in a little bit of a reverse situation right now, where we have a shortage of housing, and we have some other things I'm going to show in a minute. Hard to build new housing now for a lot of reasons. I mean, we were talking before this meeting about the unpredictability of local review processes, the length of them, some of the zoning constrictions that we have in the region, constriction in the supply in general. You know, we've had this migration and competition driven by the pandemic, so a lot of people migrate into the region really for the first time in 15 years. I think actually Orange County is one of the only places that in the first 6 months of the pandemic actually didn't have net inward migration in the region, which is kind of interesting. But we've had net in-migration, cost of materials, labor supply chain shortages. Now we have rising interest rates. All these are stressors that are preventing us from building new housing. And then you get to this, I mean, just looking at where we are now in terms of home ownership and homes on the market, a healthy housing market has somewhere around 6 months of supply on the market. We've been hovering most of our counties somewhere between 2 and 4 months of supply on the market. It's been a real seller's market. Not as many houses for sale as there would be normally, which means that the sellers are able, have been up till now able to get pretty much, you know, whatever price they want to ask for. I had homes in my neighborhood where I live that were purchased for the 300s, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. We're selling close to 600,000. I mean, it's really some pretty crazy things. I'm sure you've heard about these in your own neighborhood as well. Here in Orange County, ramifications of that is you see your median sale price go up by about $100,000. On a percentage basis, not as steep as some of our other counties. In Sullivan, for instance, their median price doubled in 3 years. So, you know, some real stress showing in the market numbers here. You can see us compared to some of the other metros. New York City Planning Department has actually done some really good data collection and studies on this issue related to housing production in the immediate counties to the immediate north. Here's some of their work. You can see back then we were creating from 2000 to 2008 about 2.2 new housing units for every job created. From 2009 to 2019, so cutting this off before the pandemic started messing with our data, we were creating about half of a housing unit for every job created. So certainly this was a little bit, you can see housing production flattened out a little bit, not significantly, but a little bit. But we really had some takeoff in terms of the jobs created, and that created some of this imbalance. And again, as we were talking about, some of the biggest things standing in our way, land costs and availability. I say availability because you do have places like Rockland County where they're essentially out of land. I mean, here in Orange County, you have better land availability than some other places. Outdated and restricted zoning, material costs, and then, of course, those long and unpredictable reviews at the local level are really, I would say, onerous to developers. Looking at the rental side, the rental side is really, really interesting across the region. So the high cost of housing, sort of the way I like to think about it, is the cost of home ownership has sort of sprinted away from us faster than our people can catch up to it. And as a result, what we see a lot of people lingering in rentals that traditionally would not be there and probably do not belong there. But they're having a hard time saving up for the down payment and the closing costs. There's other financial stressors that are hitting them and preventing them from getting into home ownership. So this is a chart that shows fair market rents in the Hudson Valley compared to the average rental wage in each. So again, thinking of affordability, we consider folks a standard metric is your cost burden if you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing. You're severely cost burdened if you're spending 50%. This line here, the middle line, is what would be affordable to spend no more than 30% if you can make a little more than $20 an hour. The average rental wage in Orange is $14.70. You can see there are some counties where this is even more out of balance. But we have a lot of our renters who are cost burdened. We oftentimes in the housing work that we do, and when we do housing needs assessments for specific communities, we often raise the question, what does affordable actually mean? Because a lot of folks will say, hey, our affordable units are going to be at 80% of AMI. I mean, that's great until you understand that the average renter in your city is making far below 80% of AMI. So this is actually the percent of AMI for your average renter making an average rental wage in the county. It tends to, across the region, to hover closer to the 40 to 45% of AMI. Really hard to build any units at that price point. It's really hard. That's why building mixed income, having incentives related to density, related to additional floors on buildings. Sometimes you can promote some units that get close to that. But you can see affordable to the average renter is a lot deeper of a cut than just 80% of AMI. Because 80% of AMI here in Orange County, don't check my math, but it's somewhere around like in the 90,000, 85 to 90,000 income range. And that's not what your typical renter, is making. I'm sorry, Phil. This is what I did in the PDF. It's not perfect. So in our annual average reach report, we did something additional this year we had never done before. There's some really good calculators out there. We truth checked a bunch of them that will actually measure what they call modest yet adequate living expenses. So this ain't going out to dinner. This ain't buying new clothes every week. This is just basic transportation, clothing, taxes, healthcare, very modest basic costs. When you add that into the fair market rent, what we found is that for a single renter, a person trying to live alone in a one-bedroom apartment, we don't have a single county in the region that can afford fair market rent and modest yet adequate living costs on their own. So what that means is if you're a renter, you need to have a roommate, you need to have a spouse, you need to have a severely restrained standard of living, or you need government assistance. You need one of those four things because you can't make it on your own in a fair market one-bedroom unit on a single average renter's wage across the county, across the region. The thing that's really interesting is in Putnam and Rockland, you can't make it with two average renters in a one-bedroom. You can in some of our other counties, but you can see the margins are pretty small. What I like to say, I mean, having been in this position myself at that point in my life is, if you got to get your tires changed, get the level 5 emergency. I mean, you're having to dip pretty far into the money that you've been able to save over the course of the year. If you have a medical emergency, you're having your tires changed, or have an expense that, you know, you're not expecting to have. I want to highlight just a couple other things that I think are stressors on the housing system. So, you know, from my experience, from the experienced people in my generation, one of the things that makes it hard to get a lot of these people out of the rental units and into home ownership, which I think our communities need to really have as a goal, right? We know there's a lot of value to home ownership, building equity, better education outcomes, health outcomes. It's some of these other early stage family stressors that are sort of increasing as time goes by. The two biggest are childcare and college debt. So childcare across the region for one child averages $800 to $1,300 a month. Across the region, we're seeing an increased number of service deserts, lack of availability of childcare. A lot of centers have shut down. This is going to be the subject of our main independent research in 2023. Is going to be on this topic. We actually just met with a steering committee of childcare experts the other day to get this kicked off. And then the other one is college debt. So for a family of two folks who went to college, average monthly payments hang somewhere around $800 right in that universe. So if you think about this for a young family, just as you're thinking about having a kid, just as you're thinking about owning a house, trying to buy a house, you've got about $2,000 a month in your income going out the door to things like child care and college debt. And that makes it really hard for people to save up for the closing costs, save up for the down payment. And as a result, I think it results in more people staying in rentals longer. You can see what that means. You know, if you slow down just a little bit, Bill, you see that's like $24,000 a year. You take that off your AMI, you're in the $91,000 range. That's still pretty good living. So you start to take these expenses off your two-renter income, average two-renter income families. I mean, you're getting really down to the bone now, you know, cutting into what you can handle. And there ain't enough room left in your income to be able to save up for down payment and closing costs, try to get out of rental housing. So what effect does this have? Well, I'll tell you my own personal story. I'm born and raised in Newburgh in affordable housing. You know, my wife and I got married, had a child. And I remember we sat down and we said, hey, we only have enough money to either try our best to try to save up for down payment and closing costs, try to own a home. My family never owned a home in our history. Or to have a second kid. We could not do both. And we decided that I would go out and get a second job and try to save up for the down payment and closing costs, and we'd go after the house. And what you see on this chart is that this decision is being made more and more and more across our region. Now, your data are skewed, frankly, because of the city population here in Orange County, where, you know, in Palm Tree, the median age is 14.2 compared to a county average of 37. If you would take that population as your county, you'd be right in here with the rest of them, of course, in Rockland and in Sullivan. They have that same, you know, unique population and the same sort of statistical, abnormalities as a result of it. But you'd be right in here with the rest. I was down in Westchester County today explaining they're having 2,700 fewer kids each year than they had in 1997. Okay, what does that mean for us, right? I'll just point out as well, you know, then there's the issue of migration. I think some of us were talking about this before. You know, regional data, you go back, 15 years, we've been losing somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 people per year from the region to outward migration. If they're staying in the state, it's usually New York City and Albany area. If they're going out the state, it's usually the Carolinas, Florida, Arizona, places that fit that dual standard of better sort of weather, but also a less costly standard, right? You can see here, Orange County, sort of bopping around the past few years. This year was the first year that the region, these are 2019, 2020 numbers. This includes the first 6 months of the pandemic, these data do. And this was the first time the region has gained population since what we call the 9/11 hump, which was 2001, 2, 3, and 4, when a lot of people moved out of New York City into the region, got here, realized they either didn't like the commute, didn't like the way of life, didn't like something. They all went back, and then they dragged a whole bunch of people with them. And if you look at the demography charts, it looks like a camel hump in the demographics, and the numbers continue to go down after that. It'll be interesting to see when the data come out this spring for the 2020-21 year. That'll be the main body of the pandemic. And then we're going to watch this carefully going ahead because of work from home software who is ubiquitous now. We might not see that same hump this time. It might look more like a plateau. So we want to track that very, very carefully. The other thing I think we want to start to track is the 7th largest number of people who migrated into the region from Los Angeles. I figured that was TV and film. I met a bunch of them. They were tired of having their communities set on fire and have no water. These are climate refugees. We're actually getting climate, you know, a little bit of a signal of climate refugees coming into the region. I think we should just pay attention to that.
Very little of it was film related from your anecdotes.
Some of it was film related. You could go down and talk to people who were at Lions, dating Youngsters or something like that, and some of it was. But I met 3 of them who were like, no, we don't work in TV and film, but we did move here because we were tired of always having water restrictions, having the electricity shut off on us because it was peak fire.
Rather deal with smell than deal with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's yeah. So what does this mean, right? If I just go back, significantly dropping birth rates, outward migration, what this means is it starts to chip away at the workforce. So if you compare the 2 oldest cohorts in our workforce to the 2 youngest cohorts in our workforce, the 2 older cohorts outnumber the younger ones by 100,000 people across the region. That means that for every person leaving the labor force to retirement, we only have a fraction of a person coming into it. And structurally, that's not good for the long-term structure of our economy. And you're going to see, you know, these help wanted signs that have persisted in some of the key industries across the region are going to have a harder and harder time going away because just on a straight mathematical basis, we're moving toward having fewer people in the labor force over time. And that's something we need to be concerned about. The current labor force needs, I don't think I have to tell you this, but I mean, we participated in this big statewide survey and analysis of the workforce with the ESC and New York State Department of Labor. There was a survey done of job seekers and employers. I think the end number on the job seekers was about 5,500 people. The end number on the employers was somewhere around 1,200 employers. And this was what came back as the biggest needs across the region. Of course, about 40% of our job postings at that time were in healthcare. That's a full spectrum of healthcare, right? Doctors all the way down to like labs, lab technicians, radiology technicians. I don't have to tell you guys, food service, tourism, and hospitality, having a real hard time hiring people right now. Warehouse workers, construction trade. If you have a CDL license right now, you can essentially go write your own paycheck. I mean, there are so many people looking for folks with CDL licenses right now. It's pretty startling. Information technology, emergency medical technicians, some of our utilities, especially water and wastewater, are really struggling to find employees in administrative and management positions. The thing that's interesting that I think we also need to watch is this. This on the left is a list of the jobs that employers said they were having the most difficulty filling, okay? So you'll see it here, some of the medical positions, you'll see the CDL driver, you'll see some of the construction trades in there. This was a year-over-year list of what job seekers said they were looking for work in. Now, I'll just point out, there's some good metrics in here, but when you look at retail, when you look at healthcare, when you look at accommodation and food service, the interest in these has dropped, and in some cases dropped significantly. So the interest in working in healthcare dropped by about 7%. The interest in working in food service dropped, by 1%. But people left. It was 11% of it was their last job, but they don't want to work in that anymore. Retail trade, I mean, you can see some of the drop there. Some of the places where we have the most needs, we also have dwindling interest among the workforce. And again, something we need to be mindful of, and there may be some connections to housing there. There's also some cases where the interest and the openings match up, but we're not finding each other. I'll call your attention again to the CDL drivers one. Again, employers. Employers listed CDL licenses as the 4th most needed skill in the region. Job seekers listed it as the 4th thing. They were interested in getting training, but we're not meeting each other. So why is that? Well, job seekers said that they really are interested in going and getting training, but they're also kind of intimidated by going and getting retrained. And the reasons they're intimidated by it are on this list. So for some of them, it's cost. For some of them, they just don't know how to get started. For some of them, they're worried about they have loan debt already. And if they go back to get trained, they're worried about adding on to that debt. For some of them, it's child care. For some of them, it's transportation. transportation, but there's a lot of things that are making job seekers worried about going and getting retrained so they can fill some of these gaps that we have in the workforce right now. So let's bring that back to housing. So as I said, I called around the past couple of days. Some smart people who get involved in IDAs in the past, some planning experts. And I said, hey, if you want an IDA, what would you do to encourage housing? And these were the three strategies I rose to the top as things that I thought were pretty thoughtful. So strategy one is kind of straightforward. But, you know, the IDA could include tax incentives for market rate housing as part of its universal tax exemption policy, and plus making stipulations so long as the projects include a certain number of units that are affordable at a certain percentage of the area median income. So an example would be 20% of units need to be affordable at no greater than 80% of AMI. That's one strategy. Second strategy I think is kind of interesting. So you could include in the UTAP a certain percentage of proceeds from all pilots or certain pilots that could go specifically toward a fund that is meant to encourage the development of housing. And you could decide to use those proceeds in a lot of different ways. You could put it toward the creation of a countywide housing trust fund, and that trust fund would have to have rules for the sorts of projects that it would fund and what percentage it would fund. You could use it toward the installation or expansion of infrastructure to site specifically where housing is going to be developed or where zoning for housing exists. You could use it to encourage housing planning within the county that would hopefully yield some more housing. You could use it as a housing subsidy that would spur the development of housing. And this could be designed in a lot of ways, one of which is the standard pilot could even have a surcharge that's directed for housing that's directed toward entities that are creating or exacerbating the housing burden. So for example, not to call out one industry sector or another, but we know certain types of tourism destinations pay a relatively low wage but have a lot of jobs. That really increases the housing burden because then you have a lot of folks being paid at a wage that maybe doesn't meet that standard for your fair market rent, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, but it employs 150 or 200 people. That may be the kind of place where you go, okay, you have to help us, you have to help us on the housing end by making a contribution of X percent to this fund where we're going to help make sure or encourage housing for the sorts of folks that you're going to employ. And then the third one is actually an idea that's been used to pretty good effect in places like Yonkers and Buffalo, which is the IDA and the UTEP could target a district, not a specific project, not a specific, proposal, but you actually have an innovation district or a brownfield area or something along those lines where you're providing, the incentives to that district. And people would then come in and make proposals to build in that district, mixed-use things, co-locating commercial, industrial, residential uses. So for those of you who are familiar with what they're doing down in Westchester County, I forget which of the pharmaceutical companies it is, but they're building a new complex where they're co-locating R&D, commercial, and housing all in one grand development scheme. That's sort of like what innovation districts are meant to encourage, as I say, being used in Yonkers and Buffalo. This strategy obviously is linked, to the fact that you need smart planning because this requires modernized zoning, different thinking, not thinking commercial sits over here, residential sits over here, industrial sits on the north side of town, but understanding that the modern patterns of development tend to more co-locate these things within a walkable distance as part of campuses and districts and things like that. And you would use this as a tool to spur that kind of development, housing being part of it, right? So those are just some of the ideas. I just want to share just one more personal story. My mom and dad, lifelong Newburgh residents. As I mentioned, I grew up in affordable housing in the town of Newburgh. My dad was at ShopRite for 48 years. My mom was a medical records clerk. And, I like to tell people who are skeptical of the need for housing or skeptical of the need for affordable housing that we expect to go to the grocery store and have our shelves stocked. We expect to call my mom and get our medical records transferred very quickly to a specialist. And for those of us who don't want to support the housing that allow those people to live and exist within our region, that much we don't really value those jobs. We don't really value those services. If you went out to dinner somewhere nice in Orange County over the past month, your meal was cooked and served to you by someone who probably really needs affordable housing. So it's just really, I think it's vital for us to understand the types of people who rely on this housing, the jobs that they work in, the role that those jobs play in our broader community, and the fact that we are very intimately linked, both our the things we need, the things we want, and the things we enjoy are very closely linked to our ability to house those people long term, so that we have those goods and services among us. So that would be my last bit. Of course, I have, any questions you have, just 2 examples of some research we've done here. This one is actually going to be introduced to legislation this year, which I'm super excited about. Sir?
Yes, it's a very good presentation, very good analysis. Looks more, definitely clarification. Looks more as it's qualitative analysis. If you should find quantitative, is it possible, continuing adding the quantitative aspect of it, like, it would be very good to have a regression analysis, multiple regression analysis, right? Look at the independent variables, in terms of housing, independent variables, dependent variables, and run a regression on that.
Yeah, so some of the analysis we do, so that's easy to do when we're working within a really well-defined geography with sample sizes and data from HUD or Section 8 or the census, where we have good, reliable data. Some of the workforce data, like the state just doesn't have that in all cases, because the sample sizes on the surveys are pretty good, but they're not great. On the housing end, as I said, when we work in defined geographies and we're attacking like a housing needs assessment, we are able to do very good, defensible quantitative analyses on needs, on current stock, on sort of different populations that may be under more stress than others. So we do that kind of work. I'm sorry, it's not in the presentation, but we certainly do go down that.
What of data collection? What method did you use in gathering information?
Which one?
Data.
So for this is a mix of data from the census. It's a mix of data from housing and community renewal, HCR, from HUD. Some of these data, as I mentioned, are from this relatively large survey that DOL and the state did across the entire state, and they had a pretty decent end number on their sample size, which was good. Otherwise, I wouldn't use that data. But those are the main sources of data. As I say, when we plow deeper into a specific village or town or even a county, as we're doing right now, we're doing the countywide housing needs assessment in Rockland County. Then we go into a lot more sources of data that will tell you even more deeply about your existing stock, its age, its condition, the needs, the people who live there, their needs, their income, and then we'll go into a lot more sources. You're very welcome.
I see some major impediments, and some of them being size of our municipalities.
Yeah.
Some of our cities are not the size of a city.
Yeah, right.
They're small. Some of our villages are not even the size of Hamlet.
Yeah.
So you have the economy of scale and/or the ability of small localities, probably too many municipalities. So you have that. Combine that with each of them, or potentially even some of them sharing, but not a lot, utilities and infrastructure. And then the tax burden that's placed upon stuff like this.
Yeah.
So it's those are 3 main hurdles that are tough to overcome. I think through some IDA incentives, some of them can be helped.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, I think there is some low-lying fruit, and there are some really tough ones that are going to only be solved with, I hate to say it, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But like some of the stuff that I think that we're starting to see, and I think we've seen it throughout the region, is some of this transient-oriented development where it's along, whether it's a rail line or whatever, or the adaptive reuse of retail, commercial centers that are no longer needing, they're not seeing 4 or 5 million people come to them anymore. They're not experiencing that, and they are ripe for the picking because they have the infrastructure in place and the land's already developed.
So to your point, there are a couple of companies that have sniffing them around the region at defunct malls, and they specialize. They're very busy down south, where they go in and they go into some malls. And a lot of times they'll tear them all down and then rebuild in like a town square concept where the wall used to be. Some of them do that. Some of them refurbish, but most of them do a tear down because there's so much land there because we have overbuilt the parking lot crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you see some of that. A lot of interest in adaptive reuse. Again, I'll just use an example from Westchester County. I think last time I heard they had like a 55-ish% vacancy rate on their Class A office space, and the prediction was that only about 20% of that was expected to ever be built again.
Oh.
So you have this glut of space that's fairly modular. The bones of the building are good. And the question is, okay, can we convince someone to rezone this thing and sink some money into it just to turn it into housing again? That's all great. I guess the one concern I would have on sort of the trends we see in the region are really leaning rental heavy. Now listen, we need to increase the rental stock, don't get me wrong. But we need to find some good creative ways to get people out of the existing rental stock and back into home ownership. And I pointed out that little bit of research we did for Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity, I think, is the 5th largest home builder in the country, but here in New York, they're only able to do about 60 homes a year statewide.
Wow.
And the reason for that is our taxing and assessment policies in New York treat Habitat homes differently than most states do. So here we assess them and then tax them like they're any other home. So there's comps in the neighborhood, you compare it to the comps, you assess it against the comps. And what ends up happening is that lower moderate income first time home buying family then has a pretty big tax burden relative to its ability to pay, right? And that's why they got the subsidy from Habitat in the first place. They wanted to get them into home ownership and start them up that ladder. Michigan, and this is what we're trying to convince the state to do based on our research, is Michigan had just passed a law a few years ago that treats them differently, where they assess the homes at the value of the first mortgage for homes that are specifically sold by nonprofits. So that would include Habitat and land trusts as well. Actually, we can help out by this. Would assess the home at the value of the mortgage, which takes the subsidy, right, the Habitat subsidy out of the assessment calculation and keeps those taxes a little bit suppressed for that first-time buyer. That's great for the buyer, but it's also great for Habitat because then instead of applying an $80,000 subsidy to these homes, they might only need to apply a $40,000 subsidy, and then they can go and double their production and double their impact. So like on the home ownership side, I think we got to get creative with ownership structures, with some other things, because I think one of the goals, again, that we should have as a region is there's just people stuck in rentals who traditionally would not be there. We can help them overcome some hurdles that have been getting a little higher over time.
Yeah. I think there's also some stuff at the local levels that has some, I'll say, misconceived notions, but some of them are founded, unfortunately, maybe in some of our inner cities, is that a lot of our renters don't have, I don't want to generalize, but don't have the pride to upkeep. And it ends up being an eyesore, ends up being, something that is not maintained or, different things like that. So I don't know if there's laws that are out there that could help developers institutional or make sure that the properties are well maintained, on both sides, both the users and the owners, because they're not always the same. Because that's, I think, some of the municipalities' fears is that, oh, we've let that over there, it's great. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, that's the worst place in the entire village. I mean, first place in the entire region.
Yeah, I understand some of those concerns, and I think we found places that are built new and are well maintained by a responsible owner. I think that gives the renter a private place as well that they buy into. And some of the folks who have expressed certain fears to me related to increasing their rental stock, I joke with them in a collegial way sometimes. They're also the first people to complain that this restaurant I really like, it's closed 2 more days a week because I can't find helpers. So I'm not encouraging kind of housing. I don't have to hire people. So, it's not a simple issue otherwise. And I should also mention, it's not an issue that supply and demand is solving on its own. Because otherwise, we see building everywhere right now, right? The supply is really suppressed, the demand is pretty high. And in those conditions, in any other industry, I don't want to housing industry, but in industry, you see building everywhere. But there are some things that are unique about housing, the land costs, some of the construction costs, but the local approval process and unpredictability that make it so that we are not following traditional supply and demand economics on housing without something that really spurs us in the rear end to go out and,
Yeah.
to go out and do it. So we got to figure out what that is. And I'm not here to say it to you guys, but maybe you're part of the spur. Maybe you're one of the pieces on the spur. I don't know. That's up to you guys.
First of all, I was hoping I could get an email with your spreadsheet.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, and second, it doesn't address, and I am a real estate agent full time, the need for multi-generational housing in the area. You have people who come up to the city, but they want to live like they lived in the city, the two family, and it's looking for it to address the aging in place.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of flight out of the area, not just because, it's cheaper to live there, but because you can't age in place.
Yeah, and I think last year when the governor is some of the ADU stuff that didn't go anywhere. I mean, the ADU, that was always the idea behind ADUs and why they call them granny flats in Europe, right? Was that you build a smaller structure alongside your house. Eventually, grandma would move out of the big house into the smaller unit.
Right.
Then grandma would be there to maybe provide the child care, reduce some of your burden.
Like we had back in the city up until probably the late 70s, everybody lived in the same apartment building and the kids ran up and down.
Well, I was even thinking, you go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, some of these one-floor ranch-style homes that were nice, but they were humble, they were on, quarter to
third acre.
But they were sort of like the standard. I mean, we got really far away from that, too. I mean, we went into the 90s, which was really the McMansion era, right? And then kind of continued in the 2000s, and now we're in this rental thing. But what we need, we need everything across the full spectrum. But on the homeownership side, we probably need some manufactured home parks. We probably need some.
But you can't get in New York State anymore.
I mean, we probably need some, but we probably need some of these smaller ranch homes that are at a lower price point. And it's not that someone buys that and stays there forever, but it's the entry point, right? And then get up from there. So it's.
What about the younger generation? We talk about how they like to work. Where we talk to somebody and they're renting, and they could buy a home, and they said, "We should buy a home." I said, "Are you kidding me? I mowed the lawn for all." I said, "You're a kid. I saw your father mow the lawn. You didn't mow the lawn. You looked 5 times, and all of a sudden you don't want to mow the lawn." They don't want to do this. They don't want. So we're talking about them, even having a workforce. Well, they don't want to mow the lawn. They see you mowing, raking, whatever. They don't want to do. They want to go somewhere. They open the door. It's everything shoveled, and they go out and but they're biking and they're using the facilities and everything. They're using that part of the economy. So I don't know where that is either.
So a lot of those people, they may be lifelong renters. At one point in my life, I was like, I'm going to be a lifelong renter. Then I changed my mind. But for some of those people, again, think of this creatively. It might be a limited equity co-op where they can actually buy a unit within a building that has money, has those services, and they feel some equity. It's not as much as you own a home with the land connected to it, but that's again where I think we need to get sort of creative in terms of ownership doesn't just look like this, right? Ownership can look like a lot of things for different people who have different lifestyles or desires or, these sorts of things you're talking about. And I think we do suffer a little bit from a lack of creativity. And our zoning suffers from a little bit of a lack of creativity. And so I think, hopefully one of the things we can get out of this crisis is maybe we get people talking and thinking about, is there a different way to do some of this stuff than just the way we've always done it? Because the way we've always done it has gotten us to this shortage, and we got to get out of it.
Do you think there's any room for agricultural residential development? Like, I don't say living on a farm, but many of our localities, at least in Orange County, have close proximity to good tracts of land, but they're agriculture exempted, or they may be not farmed fully. It might just be like a hay farm or something like that. But they have big buildings or old big buildings that need to be torn down and maybe redeveloped or something like that. But I think there's some opportunity there.
I mean, this was a battle back in mid-2000s in Montgomery when I was walking about times where they wanted to do an ADU law in Montgomery. And the reason they wanted to do it there was they envisioned, some of these older farms in Montgomery that had a big building like you're talking about, maybe a barn that wasn't being used as a barn anymore because they shrunk their operation. And that the farmer could break that up into a couple of units that would provide income to the farmers so they would have to less rely on the unpredictable farm income. I've never been as locked as that.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then there's also now this other tension among farmlands, right, which is the farmland protection boards are trying to preserve the lands that have the highest soil quality, you know, could have a good productive yield. I mean, there's solar places trying to go on those now too. I mean, if you go up into Columbia County where we do some work, that's an all-out brawl up there over that sort of stuff. So I mean, it comes down again to zoning is a statement of our priorities, right? In a way that we want our communities designed. And I think for a lot of communities, we have to take a fresh look at our zoning and just understand, does our zoning meet our needs now? And does it meet the pattern of development that is preferred now? And for a lot of places, the answer is going to be no. And then what do we do about it? It's hard to get people motivated to take on something. I mean, let's face it, it ain't sexy. I mean, zoning is not like the thing, who runs for office going, and I'm going to take a hard look at zoning to make sure it's, you know, encouraging patterns of development that you don't hear. It's not super exciting, but it is sort of, it is the string of power that we have in our hands at the local level. We got to start figuring out how to pull it in the right direction.
In your analysis, have you analyzed what the cost of zoning is to housing? The impact?
I don't know if we've ever tried.
Because I can tell you on the zoning side, zoning has a big impact, state mandates, and the approval process.
Yeah.
For all your costs.
That's the biggest nightmare is the
And I can
approval.
tell you that with all our rentals, the vast majority now are renters. Like,
Yeah.
people just don't want to own a house
Oh,
anymore.
I believe
They
it.
don't want to maintain it.
Yeah, that's why I say we definitely have to bring that rental stock up, because there are a lot of.
But zoning, and nobody talks, everybody kind of searches around these state mandates that are coming down, but that absolutely impacts affordability.
Are there ones specifically in mind?
Well, getting rid of using any fossil fuels to heat and cool, that's a big one. Right, so what are you going to do with all that existing housing stock?
I think the other thing we got to watch for is, like we've done on the commercial side, is the prevailing wage requirements on projects over $5 million that are receiving over 30% of that $5 million. You know, it's a significant amount to, and I don't know if we have if you had multiple big projects, do you have enough workforce to work at prevailing wage? You know, so it brings everything up. Yeah.
Hey, as you think about this, increasingly, I mean, you should talk to some developers too, because increasingly what they're doing, they're not getting funding or incentives from one source, but they're getting better at knitting it together from multiple sources. And if you're just a piece of the fabric that gets knitted together with the others, and you're not adding the biggest piece, but you're adding a piece, it might be helpful. Again, I'm not here to tell you it is or it isn't, but I hope maybe it'll just take away some of the strategies and some of the needs across the region that's helpful in some way.
Adam, if anyone has questions after this, because we do need to proceed. I can give your contact.
I mean, it's fine.
Just take calls, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
If he's not mowing his lawn already.
Yeah, right. You got a 5-year-old out there.
They don't know how to take care of a house. That's why I'm a big fan of RDAC and Rubco, because they educate people on homeownership.
Adam, thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, we took a lot of time, but it was an important subject. Thank you for your patience and your engagement with that.
Thank you.
Adam. Take care. Mr. Chairman, we're going to go right back to the second item on new business.
Yes. So second item on new business, approval of December financials. We're looking at page 5. Is Shannon going to join us today, or are we just? Okay. So December financials for OCFC, page 5 of our packet. You'll see what was here. In this instance, the Finance Committee recommended to bring to the full board for their approval the financials as presented. So, Phil, any comments or questions from staff? Or
Nope.
Any comments or questions from the board?
No, other than it was reviewed by the, with the accountant at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the December financials as presented on page 5.
Motion.
A motion by Dean, second. By Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously with 7. December, January payables, which would be,
Starting at
page 7. No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It is that. I'm sorry.
Yep,
I'm looking at
page
it.
7. We had a couple of things, a couple overpayments, and then the resolution, the bond council, blah, blah, blah. Very basic stuff. It was fully presented to the finance committee. Finance committee recommended to bring it to the full board for consideration as presented. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Make motion?
Thank you, Sue. Second? Thank you, Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Resiliency Loan Fund. Last page on that packet, page 8. Here we have just a quick update of where we're at. The 84%. It keeps on growing by little. I know that we're continuing this process. Not everything is fully due yet, so this will be into 2023, but the hope is that by the end of 23, this will be finalized and we can put it to bed. So we're accepting, the Finance Committee accepted it as presented. Any questions or concerns? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
Make the motion.
Thank you, John. Second? Second. Dean, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. 1 page back, or no, 2 pages back, you'll just see where our investments are in the OCFC, and you'll see that 1.8 million of which we have some in the majority of which in the CD, some in our operating account, checking account, and a little bit in a money market. So the CD doesn't have the CD above is a CD that's below at 4.25%. Very, very good. I don't think we have anything that we're looking to do on that right now, but we are monitoring that because it'll come due the middle of March, or end of March. So we'll be looking at that in the February finance meeting. With that, any questions on OCFC? Okay, turn that over.
Move to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn the OCFC portion of the meeting. Motion. Thank you, Dean. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Carried unanimously. All right. Sorry if I'm going too fast.
No, let's go.
All right. IDA meeting. Call the meeting to order. We already did the pledge of allegiance. Check, check. Roll call, please.
Torelli.
Present.
Tamburri.
Present.
Walsky.
Present.
Green.
Present.
Rinaldi. Present. Oda.
Present.
And Palladino.
Present.
All 7 members present.
Okay. And this one, we're going to be voting on some things, some of which we're going to have to actually call the roll by name. I'll ask that if anybody has any recusals, please let us know prior to those votes. The majority of this stuff is internal. We do not have, I don't believe, any resolutions today in regards to tenants, or not tenants, in regards to applications or applicants or stuff like that. So a lot of cleanup that we've talked about. But the first item is the minutes from December 21st, 2022. I've had a chance to review. I don't have any questions or concerns on them. Anybody else? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Sue. Second. Thank you, Dr. Odock. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Marty, thank you. 2 for 2 on the minutes. There's no changes. All right. So at this point, we have a lot of stuff that's going on. We're going to look to go into executive session. The reason being that we're looking to go into executive session early enough is because we have a couple things to speak about. One is about human resources / personnel, and the other one is to talk about potential litigation possibilities. We may have to go into executive session a second time later on, but we're going to try, at least initially, to get it all done in one executive session to make this meeting, I think, flow a little bit better. So it's going to be a dual purpose executive session. One to talk about human resources personnel, and the other one to talk about an update from counsel on litigation and/or potential future litigation. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Sue, is that good? A good description?
Yes, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session. I'll make the motion. Thank you, John. Second? Second. Thank you, Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We just came out of executive session of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency. We're continuing on our agenda. We're going into reports, committee reports on the Finance Committee. Just like in the previous meeting on the Orange County Funding Corporation, Finance Committee has met, and we talked about our regular stuff like financial statements, payables, different stuff like that. We also talked about staff reviews and potential compensation in executive session in the Finance Committee back then. Moving forward, we're looking to have a Finance Committee meeting again. We reviewed the majority of our investments, and staff has started to put a tickler on that to work on them as they come due. Any other thing on the Finance Committee? Sir. Excuse me. Governance Committee. In the Governance Committee, we talked a couple different things, many things that we'll be talking about in our new business, but in particular, we talked about revising some of our policies that we have online to bring more in line to what they are today or what they should be. So we'll be voting upon a different language for a recapture policy, project approval policy, proposed fee structure. Remember last meeting we talked a little bit about our fees and an approval of an addition to our local labor policy. And we'll go into those specifically as we get to them. We also, in governance, spoke briefly about some IDA potential headquarters, office space, and we've asked staff to come together and put together some more details on that, which they've done. I think we emailed them out to everybody. Yes, emailed out. Also on governance, we talked briefly, but on how we want to structure some future governance stuff, potentially even with a staff retreat, highly focused on a specific topic or topics, and to drive us into what we want to do moving forward. We also spoke briefly about our Shovel Ready program and the status of that and those type of things. Anything on governance that per se? It was a quality meeting, but it was pretty quick. I mean, we stayed on topic and did that. On my report, on the chairman's report and the other reports, one, I want to thank staff for a great 2022. We have finished up all the evaluations, and we'll be contacting you on regards to all of them and whatnot. So that is complete and done. We also want to thank our consultants for a great 2022, not only on getting projects done and completed, but steering us in the correct direction and allowing us to move forward and get back to business. Not only back to business from COVID, but back to business from what we inherited back a couple of years ago. I also, in 2022, welcome on the new board members. And I know that you've gone through extensive different types of trainings and disclosures and all that stuff like that. We're looking forward to doing more stuff that'll make it easier for everybody and hopefully minimizing our length of our meetings. So that's one of the goals in 2023 for me. But more importantly, we talked about it briefly in the past, but getting you the tools to better understand what we do, the process that we have, and your ability to educate people on what we do. I'll even use the term defend what we do, because there's a lot of uneducated, unfortunately, people out there that erroneously speak about IDAs. Lastly, there's a couple different instances where I have to commend Bill for his stick-to-itiveness and his ability to defend the IDA to a lot of naysayers and stuff. At the Economic Development Summit, I think you stood out in that crowd, and very proud of what you did there, and we look forward to future Economic Development Summits. We recently had, we attended, some of us did, the monthly Chamber of Commerce meeting where all the new elected officials were in attendance, new and people that retain their offices. And surprisingly, 3 of them spoke about IDAs. While I'm not going to individually single out anybody, there was one, or not each of them, one of them actually was in very strong support of local IDAs, county IDAs, and what we do, and that's Assemblyman Brian Marr. He ran on that platform of a pro-economic development platform, and I want to commend him and thank him for standing up for what's right, and standing up for the truth, standing up for the facts. That happened most recently. If you haven't seen it, I believe it was videoed, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, probably.
Yeah, I think it may be.
It must be. Yeah, I can get that one.
Yeah, whatever. In that, and then the last thing that we're going to talk about underneath my report is the pride that we have here. We came full circle with this investment stuff. I know it was tedious and tough, and we're not fully done. But as you're going to see in some of our financials, we're starting to reap those benefits. I joke about it a lot and say, you know, whether we save money here, we make money there in regards to interest income or application income, you know, couldn't mean another pipe in the ground or another project that happens. These are all quantitative things that we'll decide upon together in the future. But I'm glad that we're in this situation where we're going to be able to make these valuable decisions. And I think with the direction of staff, consultants, and those studies that we're doing like Shovel Ready and stuff, I think we're going to be able to not only help applicants, but also make a difference in driving some of this. I really believe that. And I think that we've set ourselves up to do that, I think, better than any other IDA in the region. I would even say at comparable levels in the state. So I look forward to 2023. I look forward to working with everybody, and my door and my phone is always open for any comments, questions, or anything you ever want to bring up. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you, and thank you, and thank everybody.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we all members of the chambers? Can we attend meetings? Because normally, if the college is a member, it covers every faculty member. I mean, in this case, is IDA member?
So I think we're members of we're members of the chamber, but there is a cost involved with it. So historically, chamber IDA members have used their employment membership to go to different functions, whether if it's a county like chamber function or a partnership function or a Patterns for Progress function. Usually you do that for your job, but if your job is not allowing that or doesn't have that capability, I'll ask you to speak with Bill, because representation is obviously key. And you know, I don't want to speak for all of us, but let's try to attend more things if we can. And if it's, you know, but we are, to answer your question, we are members of the Chamber of Commerce as well as a couple other things.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't see any problem with the board member, coming under our membership.
And we have some upcoming conferences coming up that we may want to consider, you know, on the state level for Economic Development Council and the other one, EDC and what else is coming up? Isn't there 2 of them here? One in Albany, or is that more?
Oh, EDC. Well, they're both EDC.
Both EDC.
Yeah, Albany and then
Cooperstown. So we'll let everybody know about those. All right, CEO's report.
Okay, terrific. Obviously, I know there's a lot on the agenda here, so I'll keep it light. First of all, our 2022 audit is underway. PKF O'Connor Davies has begun their work, working very closely with Kelly and Marty on all the deliverables for that. So that's happening right now. They're actually coming to the office all of next week, so they will be at the IDA offices in New Windsor on site all week. Also, what goes hand in hand with that is our Paris reporting. This coming year, it's due on March 31st. So we need to have an approved budget, audit before then, all of that. But there's a lot of work to be done collecting information from our applicants, our past projects and such. I want to give Marty a lot of credit for that, Kelly and Marty, but Marty plays a big role in sending out confirmation letters that get responded to, frankly, nagging them when need be. And she does.
That's due March 31st,
our Paris reporting is all due March 31st. All that has to be, again, we of course need to collect information from the projects all in that time. Last year was the first time that we did it, and we did better than history, it sounds like, from what we know from the auditors. So proud of the work they've done there. So that will continue. Also, Shovel Ready is ongoing. We have had a handful of meetings with our consultant at Delaware Engineering and local municipal officials to talk about the process, to talk about key sites that they want to identify, what they want in their municipalities, what they don't. So that's ongoing. We have a number of them in the bag and other ones scheduled going forward. One other component I just want to share with you, I think I said it earlier today, was a community survey that we're doing. This is something I want us to get some press on this. I think it's a really positive thing. We're doing an online survey asking the public really what they want to see more of or less of here in this county. We're going to take that information. We're not going to be able to make everyone happy, obviously, but it's important, I think, for us to, with our transparency and some sort of real communication with the public, that's going to be going out. I shared it with you. We're planning to launch it officially on Friday, so there's time tomorrow if you get a chance to look at it and you have some feedback. Sue has looked at it and give us our feedback, but I think it's a positive thing, and again, something we want to make a little bit of noise about, community survey. And the last piece is this. This is actually the chairman's idea, something he talked about a while ago. This is a banner, 6 foot by 4 foot banner that will hang and pick him up tomorrow. For example, the first one will go out to Green Thumb Industries out in Warwick, the project site. This is just that there are signs that are required through our documents, our agreements that they have to have on there. But this is different. This is like a billboard saying this project was made possible by the Orange County IDA. And again, we say these jobs are made possible, and then just really a tagline, this won't isn't on it. Of course, I'm just labeling it for you. But committed to quality careers and local construction labor. So I think it sends a message about what it's all about to us as well. So that'll be going up, and I think good advertising and awareness for people to realize the role we played in making these projects actually.
So we have the ability to change this in the future if we want, with our marketing team or whatever.
Exactly.
We're talking about fonts and colors.
Correct.
I didn't understand half of this colorblind, but yeah.
So that, I was kind of holding off for those types of reasons. We could rebrand. They're not that expensive.
Yeah.
To see the bills. So we're going to put them out. They're going to get beaten up, of course, on a construction site. We're going to make new ones for projects to come. So there'll be opportunities to update this. And if you do have feedback, give it to me anytime. Okay. That's it for now.
Cool. Thank you, Bill. All right. So under new business, we have a couple different things to go over. At our finance committee, we've looked at our December financials. December financials are on page 6. The finance committee has looked these over and have recommended to the full board for consideration. While we don't need to go over them, I want to highlight at least a couple different areas. One being, please look at the, let's see, what I wanted to show. I wanted to show a couple things. Bill, I wanted to show total expenses, right? So total expenses, almost all the way down at the bottom. We budgeted for 1.577 million. We came through at 938,000. So we were 638,000 below our budgeted expenses. Awesome. And I think that's a direct relation to the staff managing the exodus of our accelerator stuff, as well as keeping a hold on different types of things. Also, there was obviously, we went through a lot of procurement in 2022, so not everything is a full year's worth of consultant time and project time and different stuff, but that is a key number there. While I think in the past we talked about our total income, where we budgeted for 1.033 million, it came in at 523,000 actual. Obviously that's timing. We talked about that, and Bill provided us with a great update on a list of projects and their analyses and how we have some potentially closing soon.
The expected closing fees, and you are going to see them close soon. Royal Line is due to close next week. And as the chairman said, it's absolutely the case. It's all about timing. A lot of our income is the sizable income, of course, it's from closing fees from our project, and they just didn't close. And that's going to happen, obviously. But you're going to see a lot in this coming first quarter and the beginning of the second quarter where they start to close. So we're going to be over budget on the income this year, most likely, unless we suffer the exact same thing. But that's predominantly what the reason is.
So we have that on page 6. Any questions on page 6? On page 7, I consider this part of the financials. This is our list of investments. We don't need to get into specifics right this second. We'll try to review these as they're presented. But more importantly, we talked about in Finance Committee the checking account and the bottom, Orange Bank and Trust for Accelerator Ops. We have a couple direct payments coming out of them and direct deposits going into them and different stuff. That will eventually cease. We will clean up the house and have less accounts, so it'll be easier to manage. And also, obviously, you'll see our CDs at various rates and such. And we'll go, if time allows, we'll go into the later thing about the savings.
Sure.
Just, but we'll go through that. So at this instance, the finance committee has recommended to the full board to accept the financials as presented. Any questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, John. Second. Thank you, Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Payables, page 8, page 9, page 10, and page 11. All payables on the IDA side of things, once again, was reviewed by Finance Committee. Finance Committee reviewed them and is making a recommendation to the full board to accept as presented. Bill, any items that are abnormal or things that we need to discuss?
No, sir.
All right. Any questions from the board in regard to our payables? And you made the correction on the total, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
No, just real quick.
Yeah, please.
You know, in the spirit of continuing to cut expenses, yes, compared to last month, over $5,000 in expenses cut.
Yeah.
For this month. So
A couple more that are going to be, you see the ones that are, let's say, Middletown or different stuff like that? Yeah, they'll be all going away soon. Yeah.
Getting out of that business.
And then obviously, labor monitoring, those type of things. Unfortunately, we had some plumbing needs at the Warwick area, but that stuff does happen. All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the payables as presented.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Sue. Get a second. Dr. Oda, any questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Carried unanimously. Page 12. Okay. Here is, in governance, we looked at our current recapture policy that we inherited. And on page 13, we asked council to come up with a revised recapture policy. And that's more in line of what's the norm throughout New York State. So at the governance committee, we voted on accepting these as presented. I'll turn it over to Sue if you have any questions or if Sue would like to make any comments in regards to this. But I think this covers what our requirements are by statute that we need to have, correct?
Yes, the proposed policy absolutely outlines what is mandated under the statute for recapture and then proposed language with respect to other instances where you would want to consider recapture. But Bill and I were talking earlier when the governance committee was looking, and this applies to both the recapture and what you're going to talk about with project approval, those two policies right now, as they, not as they're proposed, but as they exist, live in your UTEP. I don't know why they live there, but they do live there. And so the general municipal law requires you to have those policies, but you also have to post them. So when you look on your website, because your existing policies are consumed in your UTEP, somebody can't easily find them. So our conversation started by saying you need to have standalone policies. They need to be a recapture policy, a project approval policy. They need to be listed on your website, et cetera. So when Bill approached me, I made these recommendations to him and to the governance committee. If you're going to be amending your policies, here are recommendations I make for you to consider with respect to these two. The hiccup here is that the governance committee rightfully decided to hold off on amending its UTEP until we had some additional information they requested with respect to some other areas of the UTEP. And the UTEP is the one policy, the only policy an IDA has where notice of an amendment to it is required. You have to give notice to the impacted taxing jurisdictions. So for tonight, as quirky as this sounds, I would ask the board to hold off on approving the amendments I recommended and just approve having a duplicate policy, have us replicate, if you will, what's in your UTEP and post it on your website. we are going to be coming back to the governance committee. I don't want to speak for Bill, but either at within one of your next 2 meetings to present to you some other information you requested on the UTEP in general. And when you get to a point where you're ready to amend that, our recommendation will be to delete entirely from your UTEP any other policies that exist in there. And then we can amend these to incorporate the proposed changes I made. I know that's confusing and I'm sorry about that, but by amending it now, you will have conflicting policies out there. Because if someone read your UTEP, there is a recapture provision in there and there is a project approval provision in there. And deleting it is technically an amendment to that policy. And we can't do that without giving notice.
If I can just jump on there. So the UTEP, I've talked about it many times. That's of course the policy that says what percentage is given for which. I've talked and recommended many times that this year we do a comprehensive review of that. We'll still do that. In governance, we're starting with low hanging fruit, like what we're talking about. That UTEP is a little further, one of our subsequent governance meetings. So we don't want to make several changes and keep notifying all the taxing jurisdictions.
No, just get
so we're going to wait and do it all at once.
Do it all.
But the urgency to sue is that we have standalone policies of these two, the recapture policy and the project approval policy. So we're looking for that now, and then we'll make further amendments to it when we amend our UTEP, but we'll all notify all the jurisdictions and make the approvals at once.
Yeah, so we're going to ask for a vote on duplicating what's in our UTEP standalone on our website. And in the future, whenever we need to change any of these policies, we don't have to worry about changing UTEP. So,
Makes sense.
yep. So in this instance, the recapture policy and the project approval policy, while it's an approval of the proposed, it's literally going to be a duplication of the existing to post it. And then when we make the change, we'll change it there as well, right? Okay. So with that, any questions? I'll entertain a motion to duplicate the recapture policy and the project approval policy in standalone subsequent duplicate form on our website to simplify stuff that's not simple now, but will be simple.
Can we just verify we can do that in one vote? Is that okay, Susan?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. I'll make that amendment, or I'll make that motion, sorry.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Okay, proposed fee structure. This is not part of our UTEP. And the grading matrix, that's part of what? That's part of approval.
Project
So that's,
approval.
yes, all right.
Exactly.
So now we're going to the multi-sheet and
And I put the suggestions or what I'm proposing on top.
on these ones, right?
Exactly.
All right, so we have this multicolored, beautiful spreadsheet that has a lot of ink on it.
It does.
Somebody had fun in Excel today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the synopsis of what we're looking to potentially do in regards to this fee structure is attached there.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could give a quick just overview of what these categories are, what the columns are. Obviously it's by IDA, and Bousquet Holstein put a lot of this together. First is which IDA. The second is the application fee. You're familiar with that $2,500. You'll see what the others charge or don't charge for that. Second is an annual administrative fee. That's something we don't currently charge, but a lot of IDAs do, just for as long as the project is active, which means, for example, if they have a 15-year pilot, for 15 years they're active with us, reporting to us for Paris, for the audits, this, that, and the other. Well, there's a lot of work that goes on, Paris reporting, et cetera. We could charge an annual fee for that. You see some others do. Something we've never done, but something I am suggesting. The next column, the fourth column, administrative closing fees. These are the big fees. When we just talked a minute ago about the timing of our income and that the big ticket items are our closing fees, well, that's what this is. First of all, there's a couple components. One, you see ours is currently sector-based. I am not suggesting we change that. We may stick with that idea where you're providing lower fees to the types of sectors or projects you're looking to attract. That's the way this is. That piece I don't want to change now because, again, that goes to the heavy lifting we have to do when we revise our UTEP. So we'll keep that there now in line with our current UTEP. When we change the UTEP, we can change this portion of the fees as well.
But do look at that, please, because some of our competition does not do it that way. So, right?
Correct.
We do not do it industry-based.
You should look at it.
So So look at that and let's feel more comfortable when we talk about it in the future.
Absolutely. The next is legal fees charged, which ours was, it was pretty wide open where whatever our fees were in that fourth column, our own closing fees, I would say a third of that was with our former legal counsel would say a third of that. That could be, $100,000, where Bousquet Holstein and the work that they've done over the years and in working with our IDA estimates that they can close pretty much every project between $30,000 and $40,000 in their own legal fees that they would assess to the applicant. So I put that in quote. It's quotes is recommended because it is basically saying here's what we expect would be a fair expectation, but not necessarily giving a fee structure for it. Just saying between 30 and 40,000. That's a big change for us. Miscellaneous fees, the second to last column, we also don't have any right now. This goes back to what I referred to a minute ago, where there's a lot of work that's done by staff. We terminate an IDA application, for example, like we did with Hampton Park. There's time for the board, time for our council, and work the staff has to do. So some of those fees, in looking through the comparison with the other IDAs, we came up with suggestions of things that we think could help us recoup nominal fees for a lot of the in-between work that goes on. Before we were receiving new applications, we went a good 13, 14 months without that when we were pretty toxic. Well, that's all we were getting was, small changes or assignments of benefits or terminations and such. And we weren't charging anything, but we did learn firsthand the work that goes into that. So I am suggesting some miscellaneous fees, and I thank Kelly and Marty for their work in making those recommendations. And the last piece of the local labor policy monitoring. This is estimates that we take funds from the applicant and put them into escrow that are used to pay the local labor monitor. And we did a kind of down and dirty analysis to see how, again, we take so much in the beginning and we pay the monitor. Well, sometimes we have to go back to the project and say, hey, there's more monitoring to be done. We need more money. Your escrow account is empty. In some cases, we don't use all those monitoring funds and we refund them. But looking at past projects, they're close enough, frankly, is what it appears. Nothing seems to be out of line. So those are, again, what we collect in advance. And in that one in particular, I'm not looking to make any real changes on that. But those are the categories of them. And again, as you go down the road, you'll see how each IBA handles them. And we've made some suggestions as a staff, but certainly, obviously, open to discussion and up to your decision ultimately.
So, as a board, we can go over these individually. We can go over them as a whole. We can ingest them. We can talk about them. We can even vote on tonight, or we can table it to vote on at a future thing to come up with some ideas. My current analysis of this is it's a lot. It's a lot. My concern is that while sometimes we have good projects and we have some stuff, other times we don't. We are also seeing an instance where there is some projects that are refusing to seek IDA assistance, possibly not needing it, but also possibly they don't want to deal with potential negativity by elected officials. So they may need it, but they may not. So there's all these different possibilities that are out there. When it comes down to adding fees, I'm historically not a big favor of making it more complicated because the IDA process is also, it's complicated enough to the point where people are uneducated about it. So that's one. And two, I do worry that we'll competitively, not that a lot of people shop. It's usually site driven anyway. If the site works and the incentives can help sweeten it, it'll make the project happen. Or in case of like some of our existing companies, it'll make the project happen sooner because the economics happen sooner. So I am concerned that there's a lot of red ink here. And it's a concern of mine because of different things. One, it's an added burden to the applicants and more of their consultants, and it's also an added burden to staff. Every single one of these additions, well, not every single one, but some of these that are new, are going to be new buildings that would have to go out, new collections that would have to occur, those type of things. Not sure also how we would want to handle it, meaning, is it only for new projects going forward on such and such a date? Because the previous projects were sold as scheduled charges that they put into their calculations in a cost benefit analysis, and these were not, or some of them were not in. Granted, a lot of them are not 6 figures or 7 figures, thank God, but it also is a little bit tough to swallow or to change on existing projects. So all these things have to be taken into account. So I'd like to hear some opinions on it.
Well, number one, I'm not a fan of most of this, but you can't retroactively go back. If you decide, you cannot go back to someone and say, oh, guess what, we changed and now you're going to start paying it. I really don't think that's an option. I think, again, I haven't seen this before. I was just kind of glancing through. It seems like we have one of the highest application fees, which in my opinion covers a lot. You know, look, in my world, I call this nickel and diamond, you know, and it just seems like I you know, at some point it's like, I'd rather increase the application fee to $3,000 and not do all this other little stuff. That would be my opinion, because I just think that this becomes, wow, like there's a lot of wow here. That's my opinion. Appreciate that.
Can we just get clarification on application fee?
Yeah.
Application fee currently is $2,500 sent to OCIDA or OCFC, and additional $2,500 sent to council?
No, it's $2,500 comes to us, and then we split it, and half goes to council. Part of no,
that's not true. So
Exactly.
the $2,500 goes to the IDA to cover your costs. $2,500 comes to me to use as quote unquote a retainer to get through the beginning parts of this. And when we close, I know you don't like that word, but when we close a transaction, we credit the $2,500 against, you know, they don't pay it twice for us. It offsets the beginning, the first $2,500 of our work.
Yeah, so that's current is $2,500 each sent to OCI. Actually, it's sent to us, the $5,000 sent to us. We split half of it and sent it off. That's what you see in our financials, in and out. And the suggestion is, in discussion with Sue, is have the applicant send $2,500 to us and $2,500 directly to council, so it's not appearing on our financials. I did speak to our financial consultants about it, and they think that's actually the better way to go.
Currently, we receive the $5,000,
yes,
and we cut $2,500 to council, and we keep $2,500 in our account. What you're asking is that they would cut 2 checks,
correct? One
to the IDA, OCFC, and then another one to council.
Absolutely, for sure. And I'd just like to stop on it for Mr. Green's comments, which you know are certainly you know well taken. I want to ask Sue this really basically, but even though we're higher than and I certainly noticed that than the other IDAs on application fee, just in my 20+ months now of doing this, it does appear to me that more times than not, they utilize all of that in terms of how often the client speaks to Sue, how often we speak to Sue about something. I mean, it's just, and I don't think we overdo it. It's just what's necessary to get it right and to make sure these applications are right when they come in. There's a lot of work that's done. So that's one area where I'm a little leery about just chopping that away in order to simply be more competitive with the rent. While I certainly appreciate that, I've seen firsthand the work that goes into it.
I didn't say cut that.
Oh, no, I think you did. Okay. That was just, well, you actually said raise that. But you did point out that it was higher, which I think needs to be acknowledged that it is. But in practice, I'm seeing that it's reasonable. Sue, can I ask you to chime in on that and your piece? Okay,
I agree. I agree. I work with other IDAs upstate that charge that. So it wasn't offensive to me. I think the bigger IDAs, the county IDAs or large city IDAs tend to charge that because there is a lot of work that goes into it. The smaller IDAs don't have as many projects, and maybe they're feeling that they're trying to attract, you know, maybe they're underdeveloped and they're trying to attract more. But I personally was not offended by that, as I mean, I would sooner change some other aspects of your fee schedule. And
One
whether
of the things
I
Go ahead, sir.
apologize, Mike, but whether you agree to hold it and consider it for next meeting or you vote on it tonight, the one thing I do want this board to know as my representation is, regardless of how your fee schedule is right now with respect to legal fees, that is not how I am calculating our legal fees. We're charging legal fees based on work in, like, what does it take me to get a deal done? If I charge the way your fee schedule works, I would be making a lot more money. But I'm not doing that, regardless of whether you change it or not. I just want you to know I'm not doing that. So there's no harm to your constituents right now, although they don't understand it, which was evident by Royal.
Yeah, it's somewhat confusing. And I've also said in the past, and to be taken up maybe in a future governance meeting, I'd like to be able to incentivize smaller projects somehow. And maybe existing manufacturer someplace that wants to add 10,000 square feet. Maybe there is a one lump sum fee that can be done and we can help them. Yeah, it might only break even to us, but it might help create another 10,000 square feet, another 10 jobs. But they're not coming to us right now because it's confusing and they're uneducated about it. So not today, to be considered today. These are for new projects. Most of our projects are big projects, or at least considerable, decent size, 7-figure, in excess of X millions of dollar projects. But that's something I want to consider in the future.
I really don't want to make any decisions on any of this tonight, because I kind of really need to digest a little bit better and go through the Excel sheets and stuff. So if we could have some time to do that, if maybe we could do a little forensic accounting and get more factual numbers in the past, 3 to 5 years on what some of this stuff has actually cost, or for better word, projects or clients. So we have a little bit of comparative there. If that makes sense to everybody?
Well, to follow up, the question is how much are we quote unquote losing, right? By adding all these little things, and are we going to have to hire another Marty? You know what I mean? To chase after people for $500.
Right.
It's just to me, it's
about,
we've had a lot of that discussion.
It's like, I'm looking at some of these things going, who the hell is, I just think back to what we're trying to close up with the loans, right? And chasing after people with this. And going, my God, if some guy's doing a project or someone's doing a project for millions and millions of dollars, well, okay, we want our $500.
Yeah, that's what I need more info.
Yeah, but there's going to be like a balance, right? So as opposed to taking one piece with some of the other smaller stuff, but yet where it's not costing, we're not spending X amount of money above and beyond what our own costs are for this stuff.
Right.
So
we need to be competitive with other RDAs. Again, I foresee in the future that there's going to be a lot of competition to woo in bigger manufacturing and bigger jobs. So we have to make sure whatever we're charging is going to be competitive with, what Ulster County is charging. I see Ulster making a big push to try and get more, ratables up there. Same thing with Dutchess, whereas it is now, we're very competitive with Dutchess as far as trying to attract. Yeah. We don't want to outprice ourselves in Dutchess County.
Yeah. But you don't want to be cost.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So we have a couple things, and I don't disagree with you, Sue, about looking at it in greater detail. I do like the thing that we talked about in governance, which was we're starting to see projects that are only coming for sales and use tax or mortgage recording tax,
right? Not
for everything. So states shouldn't get charged for everything if they're not utilizing everything,
right?
Type of stuff. So those are some of the things like the STE and/or MRTE only type fee, whether the 1% is good enough or not to be determined, but those types of things, we saw that in the Walgreens potential project. Not everything is going to come for a full vote of all the different options that we have. I would like to reserve, like I said, we'll talk about in the future about smaller businesses, existing ones. I don't want to leave them out that are eligible. Obviously, we only can do stuff for projects that are eligible to receive stuff, those type of things. And then the sector-based ones, that's part of a larger discussion about UTEP, because we may want to change what we've had in the past. We may want it to be equal. We may want to incentivize something even more. We have that ability in our UTEP. So we need to have a workshop. So one of the things that I'm thinking of is hearing some people and talking about it. Maybe our next governance just focuses on this. You know, yeah, we have to clean up the two policy things and that type of stuff, but that's legwork. It's not discussion points. This is a major discussion point, and I think whether we all can join on that meeting, that would be great.
Yeah, I want to point out that our next governance, because we added the last one, knowing that we have one coming up in February, so we could continue this work, frankly. It's Tuesday, February 7th. That's when our next one is. If that's not too soon, I'd love to do the same thing. We'll do a little more homework, and in that meeting, certainly, of course, as always, the chairman always reminds us everyone's invited to that, not just members of that committee. But even if you can't make it, we can have discussions before and after.
Yeah.
But I think that would be great if we could keep this part moving in February.
And to add to Sue and Mark's point, maybe one page for each change and some of the history. All right, like I'll give it out. Like the application's 5,000, 2,500 each, blah, blah, blah. We received X amount of application fees in 2022, 21, 20. You know, we don't have to go back to the creation of history, but just some recent history, just so even if it's just notes, just so we understand the complete. Are we talking about $10,000 here? Are we talking about 100,000? Are we talking about $1 million? Because we don't want to waste time on talking about stuff that's so minuscule. Those type of stuff. We also don't want to make it confusing, and we want to be competitive. I think we're all on the same board with that. So
okay, so a little more history and some homework, more information for you,
and I'll work with you on that.
Great, but look, right now we'll look to address it again in governance.
Governance on February 7th. Everyone good with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
So do you need a motion to table?
A motion to table the proposed fee structure. Yes. You made that motion?
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Stu. Second? Mark? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Next on our agenda is approval of the addition to a local labor policy. So this came up in some great conversations. I had some conversations with Dean over the past year or so, as well as a newly elected official, Brian Marr, who's assembling it in the new expanded district that includes the area that we're talking about in question, which is I don't remember the congressional district. Yeah. The new revised map congressional district that includes Orange County, including Sullivan, all the way into Delaware County. I've seen personally people who are working for us at the airport, but more importantly, throughout the construction industry, throughout the supply industry, the affordability of housing tends to be less as you go further north. So a lot of people sold their homes down here and moved to the Sullivan County, Delaware County region. In regards to that, the idea that is in part of this local labor policy is to include Delaware County as part of our, I'll call labor shed. I don't know if that's a great term. That's a term that I use. Right now, we have a 7-county labor
Orange,
shed.
Ulster, Dutchess, Sullivan, Rockland, Putnam, and
Westchester. It's the Hudson Valley region. Delaware County is kind of like in that middle, where the southern part of that, approaching like Livingston Manor and that area, is literally right off of 17. It's just as easy to get here than it is from Westchester with the traffic and stuff. But they're in a different region, I think, economically speaking, and DOT speaking, and DEC speaking, whatever region, there's regions all over the place. But Assemblyman Brian Marr brought this up to me a couple times. He's actually approached up in Delaware County. They don't have a county executive form of government. They have a board of supervisors form of government. So he publicly spoke when he was giving his election speech, or his going around after being elected, and they were very much in support of it, is what he told me. So to add them into it. I think that adding a county in New York State is a lot easier than if we would come back and say after a county outside of New York State, because obviously we want the jobs to be able to create wage taxes and stuff like that within the state, and those type of things. So I'm definitely in favor of adding Delaware County for a couple different reasons. I think our labor shed has expanded to that. I think you're seeing contractors that are located up here that are doing work down here. I'll ask others to speak who probably know a little bit more about it than I, but I think it's just as easy to get from Delaware County to here than it is from Westchester or Putnam or other places into the area. So
you do. My opinion is you do see those people coming into the area to working, et cetera, and they also utilize. The other thing is they utilize all the services down here. They come down here for shopping, for different things,
Yeah.
whatever, as opposed to going further north sometimes. So I think there should be part of it as well. We see a lot of the workforce coming from that way. And we also see as people are moving up from south, some of the people that are in this area want to get up there to have, what they're used to in this area as it becomes a little bit more congested.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same people moving forward as well. So I would definitely be in favor of adding the Delaware County to the labor policy.
Cool.
I would agree too. As the western part of our county becomes more developed, which is what we want to see, and that's where the space really is in the county with large parcels for bigger projects, especially in manufacturing and industrial. That's an easy place to draw workforce from.
Questions, concerns? Council, any questions or concerns? No. All right, with that, I'll make the motion to add.
I do have a question.
Please do. Yes.
By adding Delaware's, would this offend anyone in Orange County by any chance?
I don't think so.
I can't imagine either. I just, look, I would rather have Delaware than, I think Delaware is more pertinent to us than Westchester. You know what I mean? And so I'm totally fine with
Yeah. And I'm fine with it being within the state. I mean, if we were asking about Pennsylvania, Pike County, stuff like that, that's a totally different question because it's, you're talking about income taxes over there, you're not talking about the same. But in this instance, you're jumping right on a non-tolled interstate 86/17.
My wife works and lives in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Up in that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a no-brainer. I just didn't want to have anyone in Orange County going, hey, what the hell?
No, it would be different if we had an unemployment rate that was at 12, 14, 16%, and a bunch of construction people.
Yeah.
They can't find enough people to work.
Yeah.
And that's the scale of
Yeah.
this project.
Yeah. So and we can always change it in the future. And what's nice about this is something that we can do here. It's not part of our UTEP, so it's not like it has to be noticed or anything like that. But we haven't changed our labor policy. Whether it's percentage-wise or this, I think this is a good look at it. We could always make more changes, and we'll look at that in governance in the future. But with that, so we have a motion on the table by me, second by Sue. Questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, last on the agenda. We should have received a detailed synopsis from staff about the different options for a potential location for office space for our headquarters. I'll turn this over to Bill. In the past, we received a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is one aspect of this. We also asked staff to put together a nice collage, which they did, so that we could all recognize the buildings. More importantly, the entrance parts of them, of how it looks, how professional they look or not look. Obviously, interior pictures are also provided, and those can be added to, amended, changed, renovated, those types of things, depending upon what we pick. But more importantly, I'll turn this over to Bill and go over some of the options that we have.
Sure. Thank you. You see there's 9 options on here. We really wanted, and I looked at far more, online and making calls about it, but I actually visited 9 locations, including our current location. Basically, we looked in 2 areas. One, there's been a lot of discussion about us potentially moving to Goshen. So we placed a lot of focus there, making sure we have the best options there. And then basically it was about staying in the vicinity of where we are. In all cases, they're still remaining within the Stewart Airport campus. In each case, it would be staying with the same landlord that we have now, First Columbia. And the main reason because, they populated the airport campus with commercial buildings and their quality. And the buildings are all considered Class A. And that's one of the handful of requirements I think that we should look at where we are in some sort of Class A, which essentially means near a highway, attractive, a common area, quality office space and such. And it's limited, frankly, throughout Orange County. And there are some examples that we have here in Goshen and in New Windsor. You see everything that's on this list is what's the square footage. And by the way, the square footage you see for Fort Cruddy Lane, that's right now we're in about 6,000 square feet. So this is after the landlord agreeing to to cut it down. I think I may have a map in here of that. Right, it's in there showing how they would cut it off. It's kind of color coded. How many offices are included? Is there a conference room in the unit or not? Is there a kitchen, which really does matter? We've started to discuss that a lot more over the last week or so. Is there a bathroom in the unit or shared in the common area? What's the lease term? They're all, in this case, generally said 5 years is what they'd be looking for. And then there's the rent per square foot. So you can see just that figure alone. And then there's always common area maintenance, sometimes much higher than others. Sometimes it's part of a deal where they're lowering the can. You see that with the second 125 Main Street. And then taxes in all these cases were included in the can. And monthly gross rent, and I've computed that out, the third to last column. Estimated utilities, basically just ask the landlord what's the rough figure for utilities in there, so I could add it in. And then we were able to come up with that last column, all in bold, where it shows what we're estimating the monthly cost would be for each unit. The chairman had asked it in governance, I believe, to let everyone know what our top 3 choices would be. Those are in green. If it is decided that we should be in Goshen, then we chose one of those units. And then we have staying where we are is another one. And I honestly think after the last several days, we would change the last decision there, the 33 Airport Center Drive, and actually the one above it, because we're talking, Dean had asked a question about, is there room for any growth at all, another office? Well, I like the last one. It's very efficient, saving as much money as I felt we could, reasonably speaking, but we don't have any room to grow. And I don't mean room to really expand, but one other person, whatever it might be, an in-house finance person, a COO, as we talked about, whatever, another admin person. So I've started to, and again, there was discussion about the kitchen, and I was in that, I was pretty vocal about it as well. I think you come to realize when you lose a little kitchenette and you're washing dishes in the bathroom and things like that, and it's not ideal. So I'd probably say that 555 Hudson Valley Avenue is one of our top choices, even over the 33 Airport Center Drive, but we all agreed we could live with that as well. So those are, and as the chairman said, took all these pictures myself and try to get a little collage here. You get a sense of the facade, the entrance to them, and then what the units tend to look like. Try to provide as much information. If you have any other questions, again, I personally toured all of them and hopefully tell you what you need to know.
And I know most of these buildings.
You do?
Yeah, I've been in and out of them at once. And I think, this is just personal opinion, the buildings are like belly buttons. The Coast Drive and Hatfield Lane, that's, I'm sorry, the parking is terrible. There's really a lack spot for the place. The turnarounds are awful. And the buildings are just poor quality buildings.
So there's a lot more vacancy there than I expected.
That's why the maintenance on those buildings is severely lax. And the builder headquarters is right there. I believe that's in 7 Coast.
Each car it is, I think it's 7, yeah.
Yeah.
So the decision is New Windsor or Goshen.
I mean, that's where I've looked at. There aren't, I mean, to find something in Montgomery, it's limited, really. So, but
What is the board?
right.
I need some clarification.
Sure.
Are we moving from where we are in New Windsor to the location here now?
I think no matter what we do, I believe that it's in our best interest to move. I think the way the space is, and even the way the landlord proposed cutting it up, we have a boardroom in there that's long. You've been in there, right, for the one finance committee meeting. We can't really make it into an office. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. I just think it's too costly, frankly. I do think we need to downsize. So as much as we are very happy there and love it, it's attractive to applicants to come, which I do think is a factor. I think we could save money and do that.
Yeah, costly.
Yeah.
So I like it.
I mean, I do too. We all do.
Let me tell you something, you're gonna have to yell me down pretty hard to pay that fee for that building.
That again, depends on what you're doing with the building. Depends what you're doing. Yeah. If you're bringing people in if they're coming in from the airport, which again, I didn't know, where they're, Mike actually updated me a little bit more on where the airport stands. So I'm thinking that, again, not just us, the IDA, thinking that maybe county representatives or somebody are going to come in and meet people that want to come into the area. You want them to see them a nice building. You know, you don't want to bring them into a closet somewhere or whatever. You want to bring them in and show them what you have or whatever. Again, but Mike kind of updated me with the progress of the airport. I was hoping that, you know, we're going to see people flying in from areas, and then, you know, maybe that you know, the county's office, whoever represents, whoever would be able to meet people there and whatever, and be spread out throughout the county. So, okay, you have to land there, well, you got to come to Goshen, no matter what. Maybe there's another meeting that the county wants to have that they can have there. It just represents very well. Again, the cost, yes, 100%, but it's a lot less than what we've been getting whacked for I don't know how many years. So I just like to represent what we're doing in that fashion. That's where I stand with it.
When I looked at it in two ways. I looked at it as the spreadsheet with the numbers and the square footages and all the amenities and whatnot. But I also really looked at the pictures, and I'm glad that we asked for that, because while we all may know numbers and stuff like that, and I totally agree with you, Sue, that some of the stuff on Coates and Hatfield it's borderline not Class A.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's all, I mean, the medical stuff is medical stuff, and some of them have real nice interiors and stuff. Other ones are, you know, they are. Yeah. So when I looked at it, I look at it in a different highlight. I look at what does a person look at when they first come in. So I'm less worried about the interior pictures, because we could always renovate or do whatever, but they're nice. I do like that we got the pictures of what the buildings look like. And while not all of them look the best, you know, some of them came to light. Obviously, the building that we're in is a beautiful building. You know, they have a tenant coming in up above us, I think, soon.
Yeah, medical, or the entire second level.
It's gonna be medical, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And some of the other stuff. So when it comes down to it, I don't think we can make a wrong decision, right? It comes down to dollars. It comes down to preference. It comes down to compatibility with other tenants in the area. It also comes down to the vision of the Orange County IDA. What we know right now is that we are slightly bifurcated from the county, right? We're in New Windsor, standalone building, not too much around us. Yeah, we had accelerators around us in Newburgh and New Windsor and those type of things. I think it added to the lack of oversight, having something remote. I mean, but that's easily solvable with having better oversight. You know, whether if it's down the street or 10 miles away or 100 miles away, you have to have oversight. In my instance, or in my review of this, I looked at a couple factors. I looked at where staff live. All right. I also looked at the buildings. I also looked at who we're dealing with, and most of the time of the stuff that we're dealing with. Are we dealing with the county exec's office? Are we dealing with the Office of Economic Development at the county level? Are we dealing with the Orange County Board District? To some extent, are we dealing with the Orange County Chamber? Are we dealing with realtors? Are we dealing with other consultants, lawyers, engineers, you name it? So my analysis leads me to Goshen. I say that because of the proximity to the rest of our, I'll say, economic development network. I'm not wedded to any single one, you know, but I do like the two choices that came to the top of the list, at least in the list order of Main Street and West Street. Both of them are beautiful buildings, and both of them are somewhat new, if not newly renovated or brand new. They have parking. They're in close proximity to stuff. I wouldn't be embarrassed of meeting people there or bringing people there or any of that type of stuff. I think we have a way to potentially, you know, we're looking at a 5-year lease term. I think that's the norm going on office space. If you do something less than that, then there's the ability for them to raise rents. I don't know if we had the column on escalations. Was escalations part of? I don't remember. I know some of them probably gave it to us, and other ones didn't. I don't think.
Most did not.
Yeah.
Really. And also, you asked about moving costs. We've been looking into that.
Yeah, because we're not going to expect them to move in their cars. I mean, we have, and then we also, obviously identifying the offices that we're in, we have a little bit too much furniture. So the idea here is instead of going through a whole procurement process, potentially with council's approval, maybe we can find another not-for-profit that needs some upgrades. And it would be a nice gift that the county, as long as it stays within the county, whether if it's something that aligns with us or something that's in a not-for-profit realm, like, I don't know, maybe Habitat for Humanity, or, I'm just throwing some stuff out. If we have some extra stuff, there's no sense getting a rental unit and putting it in a rental unit and having it sit there, no one's ever going to use it. We can always buy more stuff later on if we ever need to. So those are some of the things that I was thinking of. I think being in close proximity to our county partners, the county legislature, obviously, you see they stop in when we have our meetings here, those type of things. So I think that's the way I'm leaning because of that. And that's what I would be looking to entertain. But I want to get everyone's opinion on it because this is a significant move for us.
So my opinion, to count for anything, is I'm a fan of the 555 Hudson Valley Avenue for a couple of reasons. It presents itself really as Class A space compared to other spaces that have been presented here this evening. Number one. Number two, its proximity to 84 and 87 for visiting people who want to do business with us. It gives us a great location, as well as those that may fly into Stewart. It is closer to public transportation. Again, you want to consider these things with job creation. I
don't think there's public transportation to that building.
No, but there is public transportation in the area. You have, what is it, the short line or something up there on Newburgh?
Oh, the parking ride off of 17K?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody can come with a bus.
No, but again, you want to be able to, you don't know, workforce, if we're going to expand. I think some of these spaces are just a little bit too tight. Again, if we're entertaining, CFOs and CEOs, you don't want to bring them into a cramped little office and make that kind of presentation. Could we still have our meetings down here? So we are meeting in the government center so legislators can come in. I would see that as the perfect marriage that way.
That is kind of what we are looking at, by the way, is keeping all of our meetings here, our official meetings, for the foreseeable future, but the office being in one of these locations.
So, and there's a lot of Class A players who are up in that area. On 17K, you have that big office building where that big law firm is in there. You have a lot of development going down the Montgomery Way. We're not that far from there. So, when they come up and they want to tour sites and see availability of things, they can also see these things to stand out. Goshen's a cute little town. It's a great town. I think that gives people who are coming to the area a more urbanized reveal than coming to downtown Goshen to meet with an IDA.
I like 25 Main Street, Goshen, for reasons. Number one, parking, disability, signage, and it's part of the Orange County community. With all the other offices that are here, the presentation that we want to give the IDA, but even though not directly associated with the county, we are with the county. And if we're meeting with other offices in the county, we put a project forward for the healing. I think the Village of Goshen presents itself. Not only that building, but the pull in that parking lot, you got the square and everything that goes with it. I think it's an impressive presentation to bring somebody here. And I don't know if that is important or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Is that one called the Flatirons?
That's the
Flatiron. Yeah, that's my mom who built that. And parking, I gotta say, you think that parking lot is big? It's not that big.
Well, there's two.
There are multiple. I think there's even a third, to be honest with you. So that was my concern, and the landlord pointed out all the parking lots that are applicable parking.
And I have gone there for closing and not been able to find a spot.
They have an agreement with Brian Dunby.
Right, exactly.
And you got Town Hall right in the back as well, which has additional parking in the municipal.
So I'm just saying that parking wise, that I've run into numerous struggles there.
I used to on 555 Hudson Valley Avenue. That's what you want, right? That's
in my humble opinion, that would be best for us. There's good signage right on 207 there that we could have up. I believe New Windsor has a fairly flexible sign policy that you can have multiple signs on your signboard. So we can get that kind of identification.
There's nice monument signage in that area.
Yeah.
Giovanni, what are you thinking?
Depends on which side of my brain you're asking. So as a developer, image is everything. It creates perception, and the perception of coming to a small village as opposed to a larger office complex is different. And I think, sometimes the way you might think you're dealing with somebody is perceived by where they're located, right? It's an image thing. Then as a planner, I have my planning hat on. New Windsor seems better because you have more modes to different transportation. Like if somebody's coming up from the city and they're taking a train, which a lot of developers do that, it's a quick Uber ride over, as opposed to driving 15, for us that come from Newburgh, Village of Goshen is a little harder to get to. There's a lot of back roads, it's not, you're not jumping right off the highway. It's just, I don't know, that's my opinion.
Well, I always thought too, like if you're going to meet with, if you're going to listen, that big of a developer coming in or whatever, you might meet him with the county exec might want to say, bring him up to my office, whatever. So I mean, you already have office space here. It's not like you're not going to have anybody.
You'd be surprised how shallow developers they really judge you by your office, your boardroom. We just went through it. We just went through a major redo. We built a whole new office because of people that come to see us, and it's perception. It's creating that image of who you are. Are you serious?
It's basic real estate. The decision is made in 18 seconds when they pull up.
What about proximity to Goshen, to county offices and things like that?
That you would have to answer because I don't know what's your day-to-day. Do you deal with the county day-to-day like that? Is there a benefit to being closer? How often are you walking over to sit with somebody? Or are you more concerned about if somebody comes to see you, they can go and see another office?
Yeah, I think that's more the concern. I'm here at least once a month, multiple times a month with these meetings and such. I do try and include my meetings when I can. I know the county executive has had a concept that he wanted to see, realize over the years that hadn't come together about kind of one-stop shopping. I frankly, with all due respect, and I have an awful lot of respect for the county executive, I've never completely bought into the idea because I just don't think it's how people operate. I don't think they
come. The county doesn't operate like that now.
I don't think they come to us and then go to the partnership and go to the chamber.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, the county exec did speak about it. He wanted to see all economic development at the county seat. He did speak publicly about that numerous times. We did discount going over to Matthew Street because, one, there's not ground floor access. So therefore, second and third floors are not advantageous to our presentation. So while the County Office of Economic Development and Orange County Partnership, originally the chamber was also there, was, a concept 4 or 5 years ago, and it's in reality today, except for the chamber. The options that are there are, I don't even want to call them, they're not Class A. They're not our vision. And I'm glad that Bill focused on nicer looking buildings and such throughout the portfolio of options. But, there's pluses and minuses to every single building. I mean, you also have to look at tenants. I mean, I think Ameriprise is in here and Hudson Valley investors, they get, they're not doing retail investment banking. They're doing, very wealthy investment banking and stuff like that. Other properties have medical in it. Do you want to see an ambulance outside your door? Do you want to be next to a Amazon distribution center? I don't know. I mean, these are all.
But I'm just asking the question. What sells the county, right? Being across from a pretty large airport where there's a lot of development happening and all these transportation hubs, or coming to the Village of Goshen? That's what
That's a good question.
I'm talking to you now as a developer. If we come in, the first thing we look at is what's the region, what does it offer me, what's really going on. If I were to come off 17 after driving through Monroe, and I only come to, I don't know what's happening on the other side of the county. I don't understand all those great assets, those big, heavy assets that might attract a big developer, national developer. I'm only looking at it from the perspective of what a
Yeah.
developer looks at. You know, and I'm sorry, the Village of Goshen doesn't say that. If you're flying in from Utah and you're going to want to invest $50 million in a plant, you come to Goshen, and it's quaint, it's beautiful. Do you say, look at, you know, the county?
I think you come to the site that you're looking at. I think that's main predominant part. I don't know how many quote unquote developers we get to our offices, just to be honest about it. You know, I mean, Bill's usually part of a team that goes around and shows them sites and does stuff. Obviously through COVID, it's been a lot virtual crap. So, you know, the last couple of years, you really can't judge on stuff. But when it comes down to it, some will fly into Orange County Airport, you know, in Montgomery. It all depends upon what they want, because Stewart Airport charges you the way Montgomery doesn't. I mean, if they get down to that, you know, I mean, there's all different ways to look at it. But like I said, I don't think we can make a wrong decision. I think we just need to.
I think I would defer to the people that have to do it every day and live there. I mean, I think you guys have to have some input. For me, it doesn't matter. I'm not utilizing the office. I just gave you a perspective as an architect and developer, what I would see and what I would look at. We go to the IDA offices constantly. We're always going to them in every community that we go into. So you have to speak up of how you feel about. You have to do this community every day. I don't.
Well, it's funny. I think I said this in governance in the beginning of this process several months ago. I was saying out loud, saying to myself, I don't think you make a decision like this based on who's in the staff seat at that moment. But I frankly started to change my mind on that over the months, because it's 2023 and everyone is trying to attract and retain talent. And, you know, those being benefits or not. And in this case, it's kind of taken away a benefit when we move, because we all, just personally speaking, we all happen to live in the vicinity, which is certainly a factor. There are other factors, some of the things we've been talking about, of why we're in favor of there, but a lot of it's personal. Me personally, I hate to air my own dirty laundry. I have childcare issues in the morning, this, that, and the other. It's another 15, 20 minutes for me to get to the office. That's honestly my biggest concern personally, not just the commute and the additional cost. It's that I just can't get to the office soon enough. And that's the case for everyone. So that's probably, I think it's, you know, again, because of quality of life, how it impacts us, I think that's where we are. But we obviously want to full.
That's important. I think people have to hear that.
Well, you know, typically speaking and rationally speaking, site selection is early in the process. So they figure out where they're looking. That's why they even know which county to come to talk about benefits. So certainly that is part of it. And then, and that's why I think, as I said before, they're not looking at a site, talking to the partnership about sites, and then coming across the hall to come apply for benefits. This is not how they work. It's a couple months later. As you know, they need to have gone through CPRO before we can approve incentives. So the timing is a little different, but certainly I've had plenty of developers already in my time in the IDA come to the airport, to our offices. Absolutely.
I wasn't even sure of that, and you know how much, and that was my thought. But then when he said he's in IDA offices all the time, I mean, one of the largest developers across the river.
Sure.
I never even thought that he'd be in IDA offices all the time. I mean, you know, looking at different incentives and seeing what works, what doesn't work in planning. I never even thought of that. I just figured, like, if we wanted to attract, and we do, some of the larger players when they're coming in. But again, that was my perspective. And again, if it was that big, you're probably gonna have them upstairs. You're gonna call them upstairs. So
Yeah, it was like the one.
you're gonna go right over here. You're gonna go right, which is great. I was all they get here, right? I mean, once you make that call and he makes it, he knows they're coming, whatever, you're gonna put a big show on, unless they say they're coming into the airport, and then you want to have a nice space for them to see them. Or if he's that big or whatever, like the Legoland, or they're going upstairs. They're going right by you. They tell you.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting point you made a couple weeks ago about, I'm sorry, last thing was just that it's actually an asset to the county to have something out there as opposed to redundancy of us being down the street here. That I thought that was interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's an office. It's something that the county exec and others should utilize. Sorry.
Based on my analysis, you know, going through, looking at amenities, price, all the rest of it, my number one is 555 Hudson. My number two is 17 West. My number three is 25 Main.
Yeah, there's a lot of numbers there. Go number one first.
555 Hudson. Thank you. Based on offices, what I could see in the pictures. Number two, 17 West. I like the layout of the open space concept. And number three, 23 Main Street. And my absolute last, which I will fight to the death, is staying at Robbie Lane.
Because of cost.
Because of cost, because of land, because of everything. It just seems like it's a lot of money, and I'm not seeing what we get.
Dr. Oda,
Yes.
what do you think?
To go with the 55 options. That's my number one.
I can't say I'm going to be an advocate for 55 Hudson. Being next to an Amazon distribution center, while we like Amazon as a tenant, I don't think anybody wants to be next to it. Also having a medical imaging center there where I routinely see ambulances there all the time. I don't want to see people coming out on gurneys. It's not something that I don't think we want to portray. I'll reserve comment about the airport because right now I'm going through a transition period myself. I'll speak to everyone individually about that or offline. I do like the developer. First Columbia's a quality developer. They built some nice buildings. You know, you have some law offices there. I think Drake Law
would be right
is
next
right
to
there.
it.
They represent a lot of our applicants.
Yeah.
And a lot of planning boards and different stuff like that. So that's also a concern. I mean,
TD Bank is also there,
Yeah.
in the same building.
Yeah.
And was Major Consulting engineering firm
Yeah.
now. They're there.
I apologize, which building is that?
555, Hudson Valley.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
the roadways are very poor. The local roads off of the highway, New Windsor will not invest in. So it's not the best looking roadway system, but the building is nice. But I'm not gonna vote for 555 or 555 Hudson Valley Avenue. I'm just not an advocate for that location for our offices. I like the concept that the county has put forward of having everything at the county seat. So I'm going to be advocating for something in Goshen, and I think the two that come to the top are 25 Main and 17 West. Both of them look quality type buildings, and if I had to choose one over the other, I would say 25 Main. But I would like either one of those. I think
Didn't 25 Main, 25 Main, that's all.
Yeah.
The Flatiron.
I know this one's 17 very well. You know, 17 had a small lot, if I remember.
It's the lot that's behind Kelly Jean's restaurant.
Yeah, I know.
There's always some debate there, controversy because people are parking behind there.
Yeah, that runs sometimes into parking too.
Exactly. The time I've been there 2 or 3 times, and there was room for parking until it was overloaded there, but it is small. And the only thing I should add, I was kind of holding this back, but I did speak to the county executive about a number of things last week, and this ended up coming up, and I said, I understand where you are on that, you know, and he did seem to relent. He said, look, you guys need to do what's best for you. So I will say that he did seem to relent on that piece, but he probably ideally would like to see us with around everyone.
All right, it's getting late, gentlemen.
So do we want to make a decision tonight, or do we want to? I mean, our lease is coming due next month.
End of next month, and we could bump it. They would let us go month to month. They made it clear that they're not in a super rush to get us out of there, but we are paying more than $10,000 a month.
Yeah, we gotta get that expensive.
So I think we have all the information that we have.
Can we try a different direction?
Okay.
Just so we can, none of us here are privy to all the things that you're saying about 555.
No, I would.
You know, like I have no idea that that's it. You know, I'm looking at this spreadsheet, I'm looking at pictures. So you obviously feel very strongly about this. I do want a balance of life and everything else. So can we decide on, does everyone feel strongly that the two Hatfields probably aren't a good option?
Correct.
Do we all agree on that real quick? Okay, so we cross the Hatfields off, all right? How about the two Coates?
Gotta go.
Well, he feels very strongly about that. How about you guys that have seen it?
They're newer compared to the Hatfields, and there are some quality tenants in there, but I'm not saying that they're I'm not going to discount them, but.
Would you say they're in your top 5?
Yeah.
All right, let's go different.
Yeah, 9 is not an option, by the way, in my opinion. It's just too small.
Yeah, that one's too
Okay,
small.
yeah, so 9 is not an option. Fine, done. How about staying where we're at right now?
Well, obviously, I don't want to.
Yeah, but there's 7 of us in here.
No,
I don't want to fight you to death.
No, I didn't say, I.
That's okay, that's okay.
it's too costly, just too expensive.
All right. The reason I took out 33 Airport was because there wasn't a kitchen. Is that a deal breaker?
It's not a deal breaker. We've debated it a lot, and we talked about all these, of course, not knowing where the board would be. It's not a deal breaker. It is tighter, and I like the idea of downsizing and looking really efficient and everything. We went in there again yesterday. It is pretty tight, and it's also the only other downside, in my opinion. It's not as nice. The building is 555. It actually was. I did not know this until this week. It was a former barracks, actually.
It was a barracks building that was rehab.
Yeah. So, and it has a little bit of that institutional look, but still, I think it's nice. This unit is a little below the grade, so the windows are up top, has a little bit of a bunker feel, so that between the very and the very intimate space, I was starting to feel that more than ever. And again, I wanted to be economical, so it was my first choice for a while. Just kind of changing now, because I don't think it's ideal. I don't, truthfully, objectively.
All right, so I'll put a small X.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
So, I mean, so then really what we're left with is 4, right? The 555 Hudson, which we have strong feelings against. And you know, the 3 Goshens. I mean, so I don't know what the option is, right? I mean, you said you have, you know, I mean, and part of this is about employees too. So where do we go from here?
So I have a suggestion, since not everybody's familiar with 555 Hudson Valley Avenue, why don't you guys take a tour over that way?
But again, I mean, if it is true that ambulances are going there and things like that, I don't think that portrays what we're trying to do here either, right?
I understand. I mean, I would have to disagree with his ambulance theory, because first of all, I've used medical staff in there, but I also know there's a lot of other businesses in there besides medical. Medical is 2 or 3 offices out of that whole building.
I've never seen an ambulance there. I don't mean to contradict the chairman. I've just, in my time, I just have never run into an ambulance coming in there. Certainly no one on gurneys. I didn't know that was the case. They came in like that. And the roads, correct me if I'm wrong on this, between where that is, and they're kind of back roads that lead to our offices now to go into the campus, they are terrible. But I believe coming off the road into there, whereas everyone would tend to do, coming off 207 into there, I don't think there's any problem with that. But the back roads, kind of like behind the scenes, you know, and on the older areas of the airport, they're definitely wrong.
Find you up.
Oh, believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Coming out here, believe me, I know.
Well, there is also a traffic light right at that building.
Correct.
So that does help, and there are turn lanes into and out of it.
I'm not concerned about those, but you may want to take a look for yourself. And I certainly can arrange that, multiple tours, if anyone, any of these want to come and take a look, I'll schedule them. You tell me when you're available, if you want to go that route.
Yes, I think probably the concern by the executive, county executive, to have it close to the headquarters. I mean, we also have to look at that too, that consideration as well, and see.
Yeah, but again, county executives can change. I'm just saying, planning or going, I'm just saying though, you're talking about a 5-year lease. We don't know.
Well, it's here for the next 3 years as a minimum.
Sure.
No, the alternative approach didn't help us any further. So,
My suggestion is to let members of this board, between now and the next meeting, drive past these sites. So they're looking at more than just pictures, so they can see, because the picture is, can be enhanced. I'm a realtor, we look to enhance our photos.
There was no doctoring done on these, I promise you.
But this way they can at least see the different buildings themselves and what they feel is gonna make a better representation. That's my suggestion.
So a lease has to be voted on by the board?
The expenditure, and historically, we voted on all these decisions by the board, yes.
I'd asked Sue about what we'd be asking for, and basically she said that the board would vote to authorize staff to, you could either cap it and say $6,000 a month in net rent, or less, or whatever, but you authorize us to choose.
I would like to recant my statement of fighting to the death. And if you all really think that staying where we are is the best, then I really am not. I'm not going to. I spew that out, but I do think it's a lot of money. But
You don't have to renovate, you don't have to move.
fair enough.
And again, we did try and get moving costs. The moving company wants to come check everything out. They still have to come this week. I've been waiting for them to come. So just so we can get accurate.
So you know what station you want to.
That's the part, right?
It may not even be that much.
As an aside, I've been buildings in Newburgh and Goshen with my business. They're well done. The two Goshens are a little bit better than most. And Drake's office is this nice office. So as far as the interior.
Drake's in 25, you said, right? 25.
No,
Drake's in
555.
Yeah.
Mr.
I mean,
Chairman,
I really, yes.
I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to cut in, except that I'm getting a message that my battery on my computer is going to die. And so I just wanted to say this in case I got cut off. In the event that you are either elect not to because you want to think about it more, you want to go visit properties or whatever, that you don't identify a property to move to, what you might want to consider is giving Bill the authority to execute a 1-month extension where he is. So you're not in a position where your board meeting doesn't align with when you have to extend by 1 month. And I don't know the dates, but I just throw that out there in case you think that that is an issue.
I believe our lease expires on the 28th at the end of the month.
So we'll have
That's where it is.
So I think we have time, Sue, if we
Okay.
want to extend it next month.
Okay.
And I'd like to be able to make a decision tonight. I don't think, having this continue to lay out. I know when I spoke to Dean previously about it, and I spoke to Bill previously about it, I said that I wasn't going to call everybody and try to drum up support for one or another, like a chairman sometimes does. But I think there is a distinct option on the table of staying where we are in that building or another, or coming to Goshen. And I'm going to be in favor of coming to Goshen. I think that it's in the best interest of the county IDA, be at the county seat. It's not New Windsor's IDA or Town of Newburgh's IDA or City of Newburgh's IDA. It's county IDA, and the county chose this location for a reason. It's centrally located throughout the entire county. I think we have some great options though, and I really like the two options on the top of the list, 17 West Main and 25 Main Street. So I'd like to vote tonight if possible.
But it is the county, right? It's the county. You have projects throughout. But
And the county does have offices in Newburgh. They have offices in Middletown. They have offices down in Port Jervis.
They don't have economic development offices in Newburgh or Port Jervis.
No, but they have offices.
We're not going to go to a social service office to meet with people. We're not going to go to the DMV to meet with people. Yeah, you can say they have offices, but it's not offices that it's in this realm. I don't understand your point, Joe. You say that they have offices there.
This is the county seat, and all the county stuff should take place where the county seat is. And I'm bringing out the fact that the county is spread over. The county is, like he said, more than Goshen. It's a big county, more than 75,000 miles of roads in the county.
Yeah. When we talk about having a place to have an office, I don't see the analogy. I mean, just because the DMV or social services or stuff like that is spread out so that it's easier for people to get to. This is something that is, I mean, the partnership is here, economic development is here. County Economic Development Department is here. County Exec's office is here. Tourism is here.
But the chamber's not?
They were, but they decided to go elsewhere. They're never at their offices. It's not like the chamber was in the past. They decided to go to Maybrook for some reason, which doesn't make any sense, but, you know, the Association of Realtors is here. A lot of the lawyers are here. And I mean, there's a bunch of positives for it all. I don't know. I mean, I don't understand the reluctance to move, but I'd like to vote on it if at all possible. But when it comes down to it, if we're not able to analyze it properly and we don't want to vote, we can bring that to a vote.
My only statement is I'm indifferent. I don't even want to vote on it. You know what I mean? To me, I would always refer back. Your points are great points. You know, government is government, and you know, the seat of government doesn't matter to me. You know, I would always defer to the staff because they're the ones that have to do it every day. They know the operations. I don't know anything about them. Really, I don't. So it doesn't matter to me.
And I would agree 100%. I'm not the guy driving it every day. I'm not the guy that's got to work it every day.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. The staff is, you know, we talked before about retaining talent. So what's going to make that happen?
I think this is a board decision, in my opinion, because, you know, we're put here to direct the development of Orange County IDA. Well, we take staff's input and we had them do all the work for us. You know, it comes down to what we want to expend, what we want to have the vision of the IDA to be.
We have a 1, 2, 3 for staff. I didn't hear it from you.
Yeah, the green is what it was when I sent it to governance, but we have since changed. I would say staying where we are, even though I don't think that's the best move. 555. That's 555 is probably our top choice. And then I picked one of the Goshens that if the board were so inclined that we should be in Goshen, I actually would be. I'm with the chairman that if we had to be in Goshen, 17 West and 25 Main both could work for us. Just, I like the 25 Main building a lot, the facade and everything. The unit isn't as nice as the one in 17 West, the unit we look at. So that's why I chose 17 West. It had a really nice look to it. I love the exterior. It has a really nice Class A feel to it. But our top choice, you know, would be at the airport still at 555.
So do we have a motion? I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we entertain going to 25 Main Street in Goshen. I'll get a second.
I don't want this to be like a dividing point of, you know what I'm saying, where this office is. I really don't want. I mean, it's not worth, you know what I'm saying, going back and forth. It really isn't worth it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't, right, yeah, you know, so I'm not going to.
Right now, I think, whatever location that you seek, that's okay for me. But again, the staff are the ones that go there every day. So they would also have it.
Does it sound like it's narrowed down to at least 2? Yeah, 555.
So whatever,
Yeah. And then, excuse me, Doctor, but then I just thought you said something else that kind of resonated with me, is that overall, anyway, like you just said, he's never in the office anyway. This guy's all over. He's all over the county. He's in this meeting. He's in that meeting. He's over here. He's over there. He's over there. So it's over there. Then I even thought, leave his staff where they are, but he's never there anyway, probably. We don't want him there, right? I mean, if we go to the office, he's sitting behind the desk. That's what my boss always tells me. What are you doing? I don't want you behind. Get out of here. Go. Chase some work down. Chase something down. So we want him not there anyway. We don't even want him. If he's there too long, we'll get out of there. So you shouldn't even be there that long anyway. So we're really talking about his staff, I guess, right? More than anything. But again, I'm not gonna, believe me, I'm not, it's not that I'm ready to do it. Absolutely not, absolutely, I'm not.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Anybody want to discuss it? Do we want to vote on it, or do we want to have another motion? I don't want this. It's already here, we're already, it's almost on. Do you want to table it? Do you not want to make a decision? Come on, it's not the hardest thing in the world.
Well, I mean, I don't know about, at first, of course, you know how I feel, I think it should be down there, but, when you got to the ambulance and stuff like that, and I wasn't a fan of that, that's for sure.
It's in the parking lot. It's in the parking lot from the imaging center. I see it all the time, but whatever. I mean, it sounds like we're not ready to vote.
I know my vote for your motion would be a no, so, I mean, I'm more in favor that this board get an opportunity to drive past locations so they can see parking and stuff. And I'm also in favor of what's gonna make staff happy. So that's, I would be more in favor of a motion to authorize staff to go to a 1-month extension on our current lease while we resolve this issue.
We have that option next month because it's not due to the end of next month. I need some input, please.
I gave you input. I said, I don't want to fight you. I know you're adamant about it, and I don't want it to be a dividing factor of what we're really doing going forward, to be honest with you. Okay. So I don't want it. So
That's my greatest fear as well.
exactly. I don't want
to be divisive.
Because it's, I mean, I don't have to do it.
I don't know enough about any of these. I feel like I'm just spitballing.
All right, so any vote that we want needs 4 since there's 7 here. This is for the order of things. If you're not, are you willing to,
Well, my vote.
are you okay to vote, or you not want to vote at all?
No. I said my vote, if it even count as a vote, would be to support what staff for number one choice would be. That's what I would say right now. But again, I'm indifferent. And not knowing anything what you know about that building, obviously you have a lot of internal knowledge that I don't have. And maybe if I saw the building and I saw what you said, I might say, you know what, this is kind of crazy. If I had to base my decision today, I would have to go based on the recommendations of staff because I haven't seen anything. I think I know 25 because I think I drive by it.
You probably do.
Yeah.
That's about all. I know the other one that was like a little Greek revival building just because at one time we almost had an office there.
I like both Goshen, the 17 West and the 25 Main. I just picked 25 Main because I like the facade, honestly.
Out of all of them, that to me is the most classical. So,
Yeah. I don't see. So I don't want this to be divisive. Do we want to vote on it or not? I mean, we have a motion, we have a second. I can call for a vote. We can discuss it then, or we can not vote on it. And I can take the motion off the table and we'll table it and we'll kick the can and have the same discussion next week.
That's
Or next time.
quite honestly, is ask yourselves what will be different in a month. If you want to come see these buildings, that's great and that makes sense, but we're all uncomfortable about it. I think it's going to be the same in a month. I'm not
okay
enjoying
with 25 Main. I'm okay with 25 Main. I'm going based on what you're telling me. That's
well, again, our number one choice is you know, Valley Ave or to be in the campus. But I'm working advance the board.
Well,
For whatever reason,
let everybody else have their opinion. That's fine.
Okay, so it's 5 minutes to 9. As the chairman, I'm going to table this because if we vote on it and we don't get the votes, then what's the next step? If we vote on it and do get the votes, some people are going to be upset. If we vote on it and we don't get the votes, other people are going to be upset. So we just never vote.
I wouldn't be upset. If you voted for Goshen, I wouldn't be upset about it. I'm like, you mean, if you want to go with Goshen, go with Goshen. If you feel like it has to be in Goshen, Mike, I got to defer to you too, because you've been part of this a lot longer than I have. I've only been here for 90 days, 120 days, whatever that is. I almost feel uncomfortable giving my opinion because I'm not. I feel like I'm in a position to vote or do something when I don't have all the facts or an understanding of what's happening.
All right, so I'm going to table the vote. I'll ask anyone to work with Bill to go visit the sites. I'll ask you to see at least 3 sites, at least see 17 West, 25 Main, 555, and do you want to look at 33 or no?
I'd love, if people are gonna come look, and 2 are on the same campus, I'd love you to see that as well, to get some people's
Since you're there anyway.
perspective on it.
So we'll table the vote.
17 West Street and 25 Main, right? Just that.
On Green Goshen, 555 Hudson Valley Avenue, and 33 Airport Center Drive. Those are the ones that are on the table, unless anyone has other things that you want to bring up, or if there's something else that you want to do. You want to go to a different part, you want to go down to the city of Newburgh, you want to go out to Port Jervis, you want to go down to Woodbury Commons, Curious Joel, up into Bloomingburg. It doesn't matter. We can come up with more options. You just have to direct staff to get the same analysis done.
Whatever you need.
So we'll table that. So I don't want to let everyone feel comfortable getting more information. Okay. We still have a month to play with. You know, it's gonna cause us to have to stay in our location at least another month, if not 2, by not making a decision today. But it's just money. No, it's just money.
No. Don't say it's just, it is. No, it means a lot to me, the money. Like, I'm holding up money that, public money and whatever else. I mean, we spent tireless
money
time.
to say that.
I understand that. I understand that. But we spent tireless time here trying to consolidate and save money and create more.
Done a great job building.
Whatever else. Right. So, I don't take it lightly, whatever, but I just, so.
Okay, but it is money. I mean, we're gonna have to vote on expending money on a facility that we don't have a lease on.
So we really don't have a month. When we were talking about it, you said we thought we had another month, we really don't.
It's due, our lease expires February 28th. So today is January 17th. If we had a decision today, we would be able to, in the next week or so, hire somebody and then, get the lease done with council and start moving.
Right, negotiate first.
Will we be done by the 28th?
First,
Probably not. So we're looking at least another month, no matter if we make a decision tonight or not. I just hope that if we wait till the next month, it doesn't bring us into a second or third month, because I don't know if the rate would be the same if doing a month to month, or is you going to increase the rate? Yeah,
I'll verify that.
Yeah. So do whatever information so we can vote on it. We can bring it in front of finance or governance in the next sessions of meetings to make a recommendation. But if we have to do it, we have to do it. But we still have the information.
Absolutely.
So I'll ask everybody to please look at the information, but tour it. Contact staff, take a look at all the buildings. Even the ones that we discounted, if you want to. You can drive by them, you can do whatever. If there's anything else that's out there that you know of, that you think is something that is IDA worthy, let staff know and they'll analyze it and see if it meets our criteria. We want to be at least 1,400 square feet-ish.
Yeah.
2,000. We want to be in a Class A building. We want to have a great entrance. We want to have good parking. We want to have a bathroom. We want to have a kitchenette if possible. I mean, that's always better than washing the dishes in the bathroom.
It is.
I'm not an advocate for that. But yeah, we have a lot of options.
I'm looking at something here on the green top choices by staff. They want written in green. So we have.
Yeah, that's changed a little bit, Dr. Oda.
I just changed the bottom one.
The bottom one changed.
We changed it from 33 Airport Center Drive, which could work also, but more to 555 Hudson Valley Avenue. That's our top choice.
All right, guys, it's 9:00.
It is.
We have a motion to adjourn.
You make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Second. You want to have a second? Second. Thank you, Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously.
Thank you.